Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
I've been going out with a girl, her name is Julie, but last night she said to me when we were watching telly.
Gary, in Eltham, you're a big fan of Trump's. You've been following his progress for years. Tell me what's so special about him, Gary, in your view.
Well, the thing about Trump, he's not a politician. He's never pretended to be a politician. I've only just come out because I actually work night, but I just followed the thing about you said about Meryl Streep and Puerto Rico. What was wrong with what he did in Puerto Rico?
No, when it was happening, he was going on about the footballers taking the knee all the time. He wasn't putting his...
No. That's just part of the media. What he actually did, he got on a plane and he went over to Puerto Rico himself, and he was actually handing out aid. The food and water that he actually had shipped in there, in the port, he had thousands of containers, and there was that many containers with food and water in there that he actually couldn't take any more in. And the reason why he wasn't getting out to the people, because the truck drivers went on strike, and they said, we're not going to move nothing until you actually give us $50 an hour to actually move it. So he actually put all the aid, he actually put American forces in there, hospital ships and whatever in there, and he did as much as he could. He even put $1 million of his own money into the disaster fund.
He said it wasn't. He said it wasn't a real catastrophe.
Who did?
Donald Trump described what had happened to the Puerto Rican people as not a real catastrophe.
I didn't hear that bit, but it was same as like the woman who was in charge of one of the cities. She was actually stood in front of a load of aid, food, water, and all this, that, and the other, and saying, "Oh no, you haven't done nothing. We haven't got any food. We haven't got any water." And it's just the Puerto Rican people couldn't actually get the food because the truck drivers wouldn't do it for less than $50 an hour.
You're talking about the Puerto Rican mayor.
Yeah, the one who come on and said, "Oh, Trump hasn't done this, Trump hasn't done that." He actually put $1 million of his own money into it.
What is it about him? What is it about him that you followed for so long? Because you obviously were looking at him closely before he was president.
No, I only actually, as I said, I've been looking at him for 2 years since he started running.
Oh, while he's,
I thought America needs a businessman. Obama had run the country into the ground that much, but you never hear of this from CNN or CNBC or whatever, because they're all for, even during the Clinton campaign, they actually, CNN admitted online, well, we can't do nothing to help them more than we have done. Every single media, apart from one or two, has been totally against, all his reforms or everything he's done for the country.
What reforms? Banning LGBT people from the army, that reform. Banning people from 6 or 7 Muslim countries, that reform.
No, wait. That reform was what Obama put in about 10 years ago. Trump is only following up on what Obama put in place. And they're not Muslim countries, because there's a lot more Muslim countries out there that actually actually got more Muslims in than the countries he did. He's only put a ban on what Obama set up, and have got links to terrorist organisation. It's nothing to do with Muslims. It's to do with the actual countries they come from.
So you believe that he is a strong, bold, dynamic leader?
Big time. But you never hear it, because even on LBC...
Well, you're hearing it now.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying, even on LBC, every time you get an expert in, it's all from CNN. CNN hate Trump because what he does. Because the thing what people don't realise, the reason why the elites of America and the world don't like Trump, because he's got his own money and he can't be bought off. And mostly, you look at the politicians you got going to, even in UK, but especially in America, you can go into politics without any money at all, and after 7 or 8 years, you could come out with $70 or $80 million in your pocket. Where's that money coming from? Obama, he's in the 8 years he actually was president. He should have only earned about $3 million out of his wages, which, by the way, Trump has not took a penny of his wages since he's been president. But he come out, just as he come out, Obama bought his third mansion.
Well, he's too busy using the presidency to advertise Trump merchandise, isn't he? And open up the world to his daughter's business. Nothing wrong with that. If you think that's, you know, it's an all-American business stream, go for it. But you know, he's not sitting there handing out sweets, is he, to people?
Businessman. He's not a politician.
He is now. He's the president of the United States. He is a politician.
Yeah, but he's not a politician as in every other politician has ever been there. What's got Trump is actually got, when he says America first, it's a bit like the Brexiteers. If you want to remain, you're thinking of yourself. Oh, how am I going to go? How am I going to be able to do this? How am I going to be able to do that? People like myself, who's a Brexiteer, I think of what's best for the country.
Well, that's really big of you, Gary. Thank you for your call. Gary in Eltham, a huge fan of Donald Trump. He clearly thinks Donald Trump is smarter than we're giving him credit for.
26 minutes after 12. Dwight's in Battersea. Dwight, question or answer? Did you understand that question, Dwight?
I wasn't really listening, to be honest.
That's because you were on the phone to the producer, not because you were losing the will to live. Question or answer, Dwight?
Question.
Yeah.
So, small insects, they see us coming, presumably in slow motion.
Why presumably in slow motion?
Because they get away really quickly. They see us coming quite early.
Yeah. So you think that because when you try and swat a fly, the fly flies away, somehow the fly has possessed a power to slow time?
No, because they're really small, so if there was a giant here on Earth,
Yeah.
we'd see it trying to hit us probably like a few minutes before it lands, so we'll be able to get away because they'll be slower.
Really?
Otherwise they're super speed. I assume so. I know if everything's...
Let me have a think. Let me have a think. So... No, I don't know that we would necessarily. I'm just... So you think that... Let's leave giants out of it, but I think there have been recorded cases as a human being that's 8 foot tall, right? Let's get Jaws out of Bond. You remember Jaws in the James Bond films?
Yeah.
Right, so you got...
He was really slow.
What?
He was really slow.
Was he? How did he ever catch anyone?
That's all effects, isn't it?
So you got Jaws. Jaws is standing here, right? And then you got Warwick Davis standing next to him. And they both take a swing at you, starting at the same time. Obviously, the longer the arm, the longer the distance it takes to cover the space. But you think that somehow Jaws is going to be in slow motion and Warwick Davis is going to be in fast forward?
Obviously, that's a smaller scale. We're talking giant, and we're talking ant compared to us.
Right. So the question is,
Big a difference.
leaving aside the slow motion red herring, much as I would happily continue conversing for several hours about that side of your question, leaving aside the slow motion element, you want to know how little insects manage to get out of the way so quick?
Yeah.
Got eyes in the back of their head. Think about a fly's eyes, his big bulbous eyes, and as soon as they sense any disruption in the light patterns, they're off, mate, out of there. No, they might. Some of them have even got antennae. You know what antennae are like, don't you, Dwight?
Yeah, but just because you see someone coming, don't mean you can get away quick enough.
It does if you're a fly, mate. They've got wings.
Yeah, we're talking ants.
That's how they got their name.
Oh, ants are slow.
Ants aren't that slow.
But compared to us, like, if we were that... Anyway.
What?
We're putting it out there?
Well, I don't know what the question is yet, mate.
Well, if there was a giant compared to the scale of an ant compared to us,
yeah,
would we?
No, but it takes, obviously, if a giant is from A to B, it's a longer distance for a giant to swing his arm around. So it takes a little bit longer, but it's not moving more slowly.
So to them, are we speedy?
What?
So to the giant, are we fast, or
No,
like we see an ant fly?
I'm not 100% on the question that you're asking. I mean, should we start again after the news?
Okay.
Are you all right? Are you going to be all right for the news?
Yeah, of course.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
All right. Well, stay there then. 12:30. Dwight is in Battersea, still on the line. Dwight, do you want the good news or the bad news?
Bad news.
A lot of people think you're high.
Possibly.
The good news is that I think I understand your question.
Serious question.
I know. That's what I'm coming. That's the good news. I think I understand your question now.
Right.
Remind us what it is again?
I have made it a bit easier for you, though.
Thank you.
If a fly was the size of a bus, would it still be as fast?
I think you're looking through the wrong end of the telescope, Dwight. I think
I'm talking about, like...
what we're talking about is the speed with which insects process light. So, in other words, you know when you look at a wheel going round and round and round, and after a while, man, it starts like looking like it's going backwards.
Yeah.
That's because your eyes and your brain, the journey from eye to brain is finite. It goes at a certain speed, and it would need to go faster. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I understand that.
So I thought you might. So the fly is processing images quicker than what we can.
Yes.
Are we getting there?
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
I'm going to bring in Duncan in Richmond. Don't go away, Dwight. Duncan, Richmond, question or answer?
Hello, James. Happy New Year. It's an answer.
Carry on.
For this one.
Oh, good.
This is something I remember from my childhood, and when I was wondering about it, and I asked a question. I asked my dad why
Was you high?
and wasps and sorry.
No, I think that was Dwight. That wasn't me.
Oh right. I asked why small insects can fly around and avoid things.
Yeah.
And avoid being swatted, and it's to do with, I can't remember the technical term, flicker frequency or flicker vision frequency.
Yes.
They perceive light much, much quicker than we can because their metabolism is higher.
There you go. Dwight, you got it?
But then explain that spider that can stand on water, but then if it was massive, it would...
No, just be silly. Duncan, I'm going to give you a round of applause. Dwight, don't go away. I've got some very important advice for you. All right, this is a round of applause for Duncan. Dwight, mate.
Yeah.
Do not get a haircut, all right? Because all hairdressers are in the employment of the government. Hairs are your aerials. They pick up signals from the cosmos and transmit them directly into the brain. This is the reason bald-headed men are so uptight. 12:37.
Even by Donald Trump standards, his latest tweets appear extraordinary. Today, he rejected suggestions swirling around Washington that he is unfit to be the American president or to be in the White House. He tweeted that he was mentally well and added that he was a genius and a very stable genius at that. As our Washington correspondent Robert Moore reports, this latest presidential Twitter firestorm was fueled by the inflammatory new book about the first year of his presidency.
Inside the presidential retreat at Camp David, Donald Trump is spending the weekend meeting Republican congressional leaders. It follows a tumultuous week in Washington dominated by the fallout from this new book that claims that the president is widely regarded even by his own staff as having the focus and temperament of a child. In response to that, the president has written this morning another series of bizarre tweets. Actually, throughout my life, my two greatest assets have been mental stability and being, like, really smart. And Trump continued, I went from very successful businessman to top TV star to President of the United States on my first try. I think that would qualify as not smart, but genius, and a very stable genius at that. Of course, claiming to be a stable genius may only fuel the debate about the president's emotional and mental health. But yesterday, his Secretary of State came to his defense.
I have no reason to question his mental fitness.
But Michael Wolff, the author of the new book, says the president can rarely keep his concentration.
This man does not read, does not listen. So he's like a pinball, just shooting off the side.
And I'm going to go to Malcolm in Manchester. Tell us what you think, Malcolm.
Yeah, I think he's what we need in the world and what America needs. He's a very, very smart man, very clever man. He's got into the presidency maybe by default a little bit and didn't expect to, but he's now getting things sorted out. It's chaotic in the first 6 months while he gets the right people in. He gets rid of all the dead wood and the time servers out of the Barack Obama administration that was really very ineffective for America and the Americans.
He didn't just get rid of them, though, did he, Malcolm? He got rid of his own people. Got rid of Bannon, got rid of Kellyanne Conway, got rid of Sean Spicer, got rid of Scaramucci.
Yeah, but hang on. The thing is, he's a smart man, right? He doesn't do what Barack Obama does, let them settle in for months and years and years. He gets them in. He says, I want results. this is what my policy is, get it happening, make it happen, right? Then if they sit in their office and they're not doing it and they're not effective and they're not using and doing what he wants, he's quick to get rid of them. He doesn't tolerate failure. He doesn't tolerate people who do not get on with things and who don't exercise the power that he gives them. He doesn't want people that keep coming to him and saying, oh, what shall I do? Is this right? Shall we do this? Shall we do that? No, he can't do it on his own. He's getting people, surrounding him with people who get on with the job, get results, use the power that he's given them and tells them, this is what I want done, go and get it done. Don't keep coming to me about problems and what you can't do. Tell me what you can do and what you're going to do. And that's what he wants. And if they don't,
Malcolm, Malcolm,
like this guy, yeah?
Yeah. It's almost as if he's come as you've confession. How do you know all of this? How do you know you're inside Trump's head? How do you know that's what he wants?
This is how business people run their businesses, right? They get people in, they realise what maybe their weaknesses are or whatever, but what they are good at is getting people who can do the jobs that they want done. They can't.
All right, Malcolm. Okay, let me ask you this question, right? So you're saying Trump is a very smart man. In fact, you kicked off by saying that, yeah? Trump agrees with you. He's just described himself as a very smart man. In fact, he said he's not just smart, but genius, and a very stable genius at that. He's written that about himself on Twitter. Does that not make you wonder of his mental stability?
No, it makes me feel that he's very confident about what he wants to do and what he wants to achieve.
Do you speak about yourself like that, Malcolm?
No, he says it's my way or the highway with his staff.
Malcolm, do you speak about yourself like that?
What do you mean? Yes, I'm
do you refer to yourself as a not just smart, but as a genius, a very stable genius, when you are speaking publicly about yourself?
Well, I've got to say that probably I wouldn't say that, but I quite admire him for coming out and saying that.
Why not, Malcolm?
Being different. I like him being.
Different is fine. Why would you not speak about yourself in that way?
Because British people, we're more reserved. In America, and I've had business dealings with Americans, they do tend to shout about their success and what they've achieved and how smart they are. And they get out there and they tell people about it. And they like that recognition and reward from that. But he's quite...
Can you name me one, Malcolm, can you name me one other American who has described themselves as not just smart, but genius, and a very stable genius at that? Either president, other public figure. Name me one other person that speaks of themselves in that way in public, apart from a comedian.
No, I can't. But all I can say is he's being totally misunderstood, and a lot of fake reporting about what he's...
Well, clearly you've misunderstood him too, because you wouldn't speak about yourself in this way. You can't think of any other American in public office or public figure in America who would speak of themselves in that way. So clearly you've also misunderstood him then, haven't you, Malcolm? Because I can't think of anyone that speaks of themselves in that way, and I don't think it's particularly stable to speak of yourself and be so emphatic about how stable you are. In fact, I think that indicates to me an instability.
No. You're totally misunderstanding his presidency. He's not communicating very well his presidency. But all I can say is...
Oh, so there is something he's done wrong.
He's getting on with the job, and he's doing a good job, and the Americans will appreciate it. And he's only got so many years to achieve the success. He's got to get the right people in. And the people who helped him become president are not necessarily the right people for his presidency to help him sort of process and have his ideas put into practice. So he's had to have a clear out of them, and he does not tolerate failure. If you don't get on...
So was that a mistake on Trump's part to put them there in the first place, Malcolm?
Because sometimes people do look good on their CV, and they do look good.
But whose fault is that? Who should have known that?
Well, when you meet people, when you employ people, you don't always know exactly what's going to happen. You do the references, you interview them, you check their CV, and then when they're in place, after a few months,
all right, Malcolm,
you review what...
Last question for you. Last question for you. Is there anything that Trump, in your opinion, can do wrong?
Well, at the moment, I like his style, and I'm giving him space and time to achieve what he said he's going to.
So the answer's no. He's done nothing wrong so far for you. Forget Obama for a second.
The guy, he's smart and he's a genius.
He's done nothing wrong then?
No, you're totally...
Thank you, Malcolm. Emma, tell us what you think.
Hi there. I expect this to be quite a short call because I'm pro-Trump, so I'm sure I'll get cut off quite quickly.
No, you won't, Emma. No, you won't. I'm really fascinated as to what goes on inside the minds of people that want to support Trump through all of this. So go for it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Go for it, please,
what's he
tell
done
us.
wrong?
Oh, is that... That's your first question to me? Really?
I mean, I have no view on American politics, and still, until I started looking into it, I've got sort of no dog in the race, as it were. So,
all right, okay, all right, Emma. Let's start with this. Let's start with the easiest one. Let's start with the easiest one. I'll answer your question. Let's start with the easiest one, and then we'll move to some other topics where other things have gone wrong. But let's start with this one. While we've been on air, he's described himself not just as smart, but as a genius, and a very stable genius at that. Would you describe yourself in with those words in that way?
If I was being attacked relentlessly and subjected to effectively a soft coup, yeah, I would. I mean, you know.
I get attacked quite a lot on social media, but I don't describe myself as a very stable genius, Emma.
Back, and that's Trump.
What's that?
Remember, he's a New Yorker. New Yorkers are straight talkers. He tells the truth. And if
can you name me one other public figure in America that has described themselves using such wording? Apart from Kanye West, because we've just agreed that Kanye West was then trying to rehabilitate himself. Emma, can you... No, people get attacked all the time. I get attacked on social media very regularly. Every time I host a show here on LBC, I can guarantee you the level of abuse we get, whether on Twitter or on text. I don't then end up describing myself in that way, right? Now, Kanye West did, and we all know Kanye West had mental health problems after that.
Constantly put into question, which I think is absolutely despicable to use.
No, well, Emma, you asked me a question, I answered it. Would you describe yourself in that way?
My closest friends has got very severe mental health issues, and I just think...
Emma, stick to the topic, please. Would you describe yourself in that way? Emma, would you describe yourself in that way? I'm criticising you now, right? So are you going to say to me, Maajid, don't criticise me, I'm a genius?
For presidency and won it, and according to Wolf, won it without really trying and really wanting to win.
But that doesn't tell me he's a genius.
Well, you're entitled, Maajid, not to think him a genius. He thinks he's a genius. There's quite a few people...
Right, what about... Okay, so tell me this. What about some of his remarks about women? What do you think of those? Are they okay?
What remarks are you talking about?
Well, let's start with this one. The way he speaks about women's bodies, the way he's got a uniform policy in the White House that women that work for him must wear short skirts, high heels, and keep their hair long, which Wolf has also commented on in this book. He's saying that dress code is apparently implemented by all the secretaries. Do you think that's okay?
I don't have a problem with that. If you don't want to dress like that, then don't work for that company. If you work for...
But Emma, hold on. Stop, Emma. Stop. No, stop. No, Emma. Can you not see the flaw, the great, big, huge, drastic flaw in your logic? This isn't a company. It's the White House. It belongs to the people of America, not to Donald Trump. You gave an analogy with Virgin Airlines, which is a private company owned by Richard Branson. This is the White House we're talking about, funded by the American people, and it's representing the American people. It's therefore all Americans, not just for women in short skirts.
Okay, but do you have a massive problem with Virgin Airways and their dress code for their women?
Emma, you've completely ignored the point I just made. If I had a dress code in my house, if I said in my home, you can't come into my house unless you're wearing a short skirt, in the privacy of my own home, and you can decide not to walk into my home because it's my private home. That analogy doesn't apply to a public office. The White House doesn't belong to me or Donald Trump. It belongs to the American people, and it's there to represent all men and women, not just women in short skirts.
Okay. Yeah.
So do you not agree that's wrong?
I just find it strange that nobody has a problem with how women dress in various other...
So what do you like, Emma, what do you like about it? I mean, you're not going to... I mean, people listening are going to be quite marvelled at the fact that... people are going to be quite surprised that you think that's okay. But tell me then, fine, what do you like about Trump?
Abusing the interns like Clinton, and they're not being paid off like they were with Mrs. Clinton. So that's a step in the right direction.
Trump. No. So Emma, forget Clinton. What do you like about Trump?
Well, I like the fact that he hasn't stolen from the American public. Obama it was an 8-year crime spree. He was worth virtually nothing when he took office. At the end of the 8 years, he was worth $40 million. Same with Hillary. They were broke when they left the White House, paying all the sexual abuse cases for Bill. And lo and behold, at the end of her stint in public office, as you rightly point out, public office, the Clinton Foundation's worth $300 million. So they've both been doing play to pay massively. They are both massive big-time crooks, and I will never support crooks. I will never support people that cheat. She paid for the questions up front for the live debates, and he still won hands down. So
Emma, apart from your hyperbole there, describing Obama's presidency as an 8-year crime spree,
I am.
Which is befitting an Agatha Christie novel, frankly.
Well, no, it's not.
Apart from that it is. Apart from that hyperbole, Emma, because frankly that isn't literally true, right? And therefore it is hyperbole. But apart from that, please name what you like about Trump, as opposed to continuing to tell me what you don't like about his opponents, who I'd be the first to admit aren't perfect.
Aren't perfect? They stole millions and millions from the American people.
No, Emma, what do you like about Trump? What do you like about Trump?
I like the fact he's not a thief. He's not a cheat. He is highly intelligent.
No, but what's good?
Emma,
the baseline one should expect from any president is, if you said to me, think about this, come on, get serious now, get real. If you said to me, what do you like about Theresa May? And I said, I like the fact that she's not a thief. She's the Prime Minister. Of course she's not meant to be a thief. What good things do I like about her, Emma? You know, I don't support her, right? But if I did. So the question isn't, I like Trump because he's not a criminal. Tell me what you... because that's the baseline for a president. No, it's not that. Emma, come on. Everyone listening is probably thinking, this is a very strange conversation. What are the good traits about the president, Donald Trump?
Sort of Kool-Aid and are believing massive propaganda. So I know, I've done lots of research. I am intelligent.
You sound like it.
Stop short of calling myself.
I'm not saying you're not intelligent, Emma. That's, by the way, I don't agree with. I'm not going to question your intelligence because you disagree with me. I am going to question your integrity if you don't tell me what you like about Trump.
I think he's highly intelligent. I think he's obviously done brilliantly for the economy. The economy is amazing. It's just wonderful to have someone in office that actually understands business.
President Trump and his supporters can't stop taking credit for the economy's good fortune during the first 6 months of his presidency. The RNC even tweeted this: unprecedented economic growth under POTUS. But unprecedented means it never happened before. Except it has. More jobs were created in the last 6 months of President Obama and the first 6 months of 2016, the first and last 6 months of 2015, the first and last 6 months of 2014, and the last 6 months of 2013. In fact, Trump pales in comparison to recent presidents during their first 6 months in office, including 1.25 million new jobs under Bill Clinton and more than 2 million under Jimmy Carter. And yet, the RNC and Team Trump aren't just flat wrong on jobs, they're wrong on actual economic growth, too. In the first 6 months of Trump, America's economy grew at an average of just 1.9%, compared to 2.3% in the last 6 months of Obama's term. In fact, that 2.3 number is the average annual growth for the U.S. economy going back 2 decades. But let's go back a little farther, and President Bush 41, who saw growth rise by an average 3.7% during his first 6 months in office, while President Reagan saw growth rise by 2.8% during his first 6 months in office, meaning there is nothing unprecedented about President Trump's first 6 months in office, economically anyway. One more thing and then I'm done. When Trump tweets highest stock market ever with the Dow Jones Industrials crossing the 22,000 threshold, he's right. But the markets have moved in the same upward direction since 2009, only continuing its trajectory under Trump. The truth is, presidents take too much credit than they should when it comes to the economy. But this president takes it to a whole new level.
And is protecting America's, rights, trade rights and everything. I think he did amazingly when he went to China, got China finally to agree sanctions on North Korea. No other president's been able to do that. And he's now got North Korea talking to South Korea. Again, no other president's been able to do that. So I think he's done absolutely brilliantly. He's also kept his promises. And
do you think that pulling out from the Paris Accords was a good thing? Are you okay with his climate change denial flirtation?
Do their own sweet thing. So those are all the things I like.
Emma, are you okay with his climate change denial flirtation?
Yes.
Are you okay with him pulling up?
Total con. Come to my house if you think there's flipping climate change.
Your house?
Yeah, it's freezing.
What's your house? Your house is cold?
Yes.
So there's no climate change?
No, I'm being a little bit flipped, but no, come on, obviously there's no climate change.
Obviously. Obvs. What about nuclear war? What about the fact that he's saying my nuclear bomb's bigger than your one? Does that worry you?
I saw that tweet. I laughed out loud. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. I thought it was brilliant, and actually it did the trick. It was one of the things that finally got through to that megalomaniac that runs North Korea, and he's now actually talking.
So, last question for you, Emma. Last question for you. What makes Kim Jong-un a megalomaniac?
The death camps, the feeding his uncle to starving dogs, starving his country, having absolutely no electricity apart from one main street. People actually...
So he's prepared to commit heinous crimes and not give a damn about the consequences, yeah?
Sorry?
He's prepared to commit heinous crimes and not care about the consequences.
Well, he's prepared for his whole population to starve. I mean, it's not unusual.
Yeah, so he's prepared to even kill his whole population, isn't he?
A classroom of children in North Korea to starve to death and not make it through the year.
Yeah, so he's prepared to kill thousands of people, isn't he, just to get his own way?
Well, no one stands up to him. He's a megalomaniac, and no one stands up to him.
And you think, and so you and I agree, Kim Jong-un is an incredibly unstable, cruel megalomaniac. You think that the way to deal with somebody like that is prepared to starve thousands and thousands and thousands of people, has death camps, feeds his uncle to animals. You think the way to deal with somebody like that is to threaten nuclear war. And you think that's a wise policy. Thank you very much anyway, Emma. It's been actually really interesting. You started this conversation by saying I wouldn't let you speak. But, of course, I was genuinely interested in your defence of Trump. And you've articulated, in the end we got there, you articulated what you like about Trump. And I think it was interesting for everybody to hear and have that insight. At the end of the day, that's the world we're in. We have to hear that. We have to respond to that. Emma didn't agree with climate change, thinks Trump's done hardly anything wrong, was perfectly fine with having a rule in the White House that women must wear short skirts and high heels and keep their hair long. Didn't see a problem in that, and is actually quite happy and laughed out loud when Trump threatens nuclear war. Of course, one thing we did agree on is Kim Jong-un is indeed a megalomaniac. How do you respond to that?
Gavin is in Chelmsford. Gavin, compliments, please.
Hello, James.
Hello, Gavin.
Right.
In your own time.
Where do I start?
In your own time, Gav.
Yeah. I'm just going to try and get in the gaps between you speaking. I've listened for so long. I know the ruse. Right. I don't think people give her enough credit. Imagine how difficult this job is. Imagine starting a new job and on your first day, all of your colleagues are against you. And then you start working and you find all the customers are against you. And you're pretty much on your own. You've got some people who are backing you in the cabinet and things, but the whole thing is turmoil and it's totally unknown territory. She's going in there with no precedent. She's having to work out. She's going on. She's got the European Union against her. They don't want us to leave for various reasons.
I dispute that. I don't think they're against her. They're for themselves. We've created a scenario in which that necessitates them defending their own interests. But don't forget that until 18 months ago...
It's such a nuance, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, very. But until 18 months ago, they were our own interests as well. We've chosen to polarise this situation. And she has to deal with it, which again is grounds for sympathy.
Point.
Yes.
I think it's slightly off the point because what we're talking about is good things about her. Now, she is, for whatever reasons, the EU are making it difficult. There is difficulty there. It's more than just the challenge.
Again, I am going to keep picking you up on this. It's not for whatever reasons the EU is making it difficult. The European Union Commission is charged with defending and promoting the interests of European Union member states.
Which makes it hard for her to do the job.
Precisely, because she can't admit to the public, because she get lynched by the Brexit lot, that this means almost by definition that we'll be worse off out than we were in. She can't say that in public, even though she clearly believes it in private. Now, that either makes her a fraud, or it makes her a damage-limiting, duty-doing politician, which is quite a rare thing in the modern world.
I've got to disagree with that.
Which
totally,
bit?
Because all of it, really.
Well, hang on, well, pick a bit. What do you disagree with? The thing that she suddenly thinks Brexit is a good idea?
No, I don't know. I think she was a Remainer for, as much as anything else, the lazy reasons and the status quo. You probably guessed by now that I'm sort of Brexiteer.
No, I hadn't really guessed it, apart from you being a bit rude at the beginning of the call.
James. Where was I? You put me off.
See, this is what happens when people say I talk too much, Gavin.
Yeah, you put us off.
By not talking.
I think you're not giving her enough credit for
what?
A very difficult job. Now, you position yourself as a caring...
Let's not talk about me, because you're the first Brexiters to get through. So what's she done that makes you cheer?
She's doing what the people voted for.
No, what specifically, Gavin? Well, you'd point at something and say...
She said the people voted for Brexit, we're going to carry that out.
That was 18 months ago. So what's she done since that gives you hope?
There's a lot going on. The trouble is, these days,
It's not a trick question, mate. Just give me one thing that makes you go, yes, that proves that she's the right person for the job. What would you point to first? Just one thing. We don't have to...
Everything is under the microscope these days, and...
Well, then that means it's easier to see, Gavin, if it's under the microscope. So just describe it to me, the thing that you're looking at under the microscope and thinking, that's good.
To see. Some things you shouldn't see until afterwards.
So they're not under a microscope, they're invisible?
No. Well, if I can just finish, everything is micro, it's under a microscope these days. Now, she is obviously, there's things going on in the background, that's the point I was getting to, that we don't know about, that will become evident.
Right.
There's obviously loads of things.
So the things you're really pleased with are the things that you don't know about?
No, you asked me whether she's doing a good job, and I'm saying to you, she's doing a...
And then I said, and then point to the evidence. So the thing that you would say, there you go, James, that proves she's doing a good job. What would you point to first?
Well, the fact that she's triggered Article 50, she's got things moving. There's obviously things going on in the background. Things crop up, regularly.
So we don't know then. I mean, let's not fall out, but you're telling me she must be doing lots of good things in the background that we don't know about, and that's why you think she's doing a good job. You're entitled to that view, mate. I'm not going to mock it.
Say to Iain Dow, and I don't think it was a fair question, do you still believe in remaining? Because what does it matter what she believes in? She's carrying out the will of the people.
Well, again, that phrase is, you'll forgive me, very much at the top of the list of fatuous and meaningless slogans. She's carrying out the will of
52-48, James.
Some of the people, and it might be different today, but you see the problem.
She's carrying out what the referendum result.
Yeah, but again, that was 18 months ago. So the problem is, of course, that I admire you for ringing in and talking to me, but obviously when I keep pointing out to you that you've got not a single shred of evidence to support your notion that she's doing a good job, and yet you still think that Brexit is a good idea, you actually, without intending to, you explain why I think she's doing a good job, because she has to actually keep people like you happy. I just wanted to keep saying things like Brexit means Brexit. That's what I mean, exactly. So she has got a significant swathe of the electorate who've got nothing more than just parroting will of the people and Brexit means Brexit. And people like me sit here and think they must want some evidence. Gavin must want some evidence. He must be able to point at something substantive, something meaningful, something evidential. And you can't, James. And you don't want to either.
No, James, listen.
We're not talking about me, Gavin.
No, but you're not letting me get the point across. You're twisting things.
Well, tell me again then. The question's simple.
About Brexit.
Go on then.
And you do this every
Not me,
day.
mate. We're talking about you. What is the thing that you're really pleased with?
How many times have I got to tell you? She's carrying out
the will of the people.
She carried out what the vote asked for.
So how? What is she doing?
She's triggered Article 50. She's talking to people in...
But in terms of something that you point at and go, Article 50 was a vote in the House of Commons. Brexit means nothing. We can all agree on that. So you pointed it and you go, that proves that she's playing a blinder. What would you point at?
I've just told you, haven't I? What do you want me to say?
I want you to say, here you go, James, here is something she's done that will definitely make us better off after we leave than we were in the European Union.
Such as, what would you say she should be doing to say she's doing a great job?
I don't think she can, mate, because she knows that this is damage limitation. You're the one that's telling me it's not.
That's your opinion, that it's damage limitation.
And it's an opinion based on the fact that I can't point to anything that suggests otherwise, which is why I'm asking you to. Because your opinion is the opposite to mine, so you have to provide the evidence. What is she doing that makes you think, yes, winning?
James, you talk for a living, I don't. You can talk around...
I think for a living, Gavin. Talking is the next bit. We can all think.
I don't know what else to say, apart from...
Will of the people.
Well, you can keep putting words into my mouth. Yes, that is one way, but you can try and make me look like a Burke if you want.
I'm not, mate. It's nothing to do with me. What were you going to say then when I said will of the people? What were you going to say? She can carry out...
She's carrying out what the vote asked her to do. She's not going around saying, oh, yeah, I'm going to do it, but I really don't think we should, or anything like that. She's saying, it's a bit of a Thatcher-like thing. She's going...
the opposite of Thatcher, Gavin. I always knew what Margaret Thatcher stood for. What does Theresa May stand for? Hard Brexit or soft Brexit?
She stands for, I mean, this hard and soft, again, you're creating a binary position, which is totally unnecessary.
Hard and soft is the opposite of binary.
Brexit is a conglomeration of rules and regulations which... there's a whole myriad of things which involve us leaving. And one person's idea of hard and one person's idea of soft are totally different things.
No, in the context of most people's understanding, it means either we have a deal or we don't have a deal.
You're speaking for most people, but you only ever speak to 3 people an hour anyway.
Gavin, bless you. Gavin, hard means no deal and soft means a deal. Then you have various different interpretations of what a deal might be, so you've got several different kinds of deal. Oh, mate, I don't want to... Okay.
Hard Brexit is to yours.
Pardon?
My interpretation is different to yours.
Okay. Shall we hug it out, mate? I don't want to argue with you today. It's not my fault. You
I'm
can't.
not arguing with that.
Well, you kind of are. Well, I said, let's not argue. You said we're not arguing.
I said argue against. You do this for a living.
I don't, Gavin.
And you're up against amateurs every day. And
Gavin, you can't do this. This is terrible. It's so insulting to people who think that they've got arguments to make, to say that their arguments are really good. They just can't make them very well. If you've got a good argument, mate, it knocks us all out of the park. That's why I keep inviting you. That's why I ask the same question several times, so that people have a million opportunities to put some flesh upon the bones of their opinion. But if you just keep repeating the words will of the people to me, at some point you will feel silly. And you can't blame me for that, Gavin.
I said she's carrying out what the vote asked her to do.
Yes, and I said, where is it going well?
What is the point in her saying, oh, yeah, I'm a Remainer, but... What would be the advantage of that? Everyone would pick on it to be in the same...
Shall we have one more go? Shall we have one more go? Shall we? One more go?
Yeah.
What's your favourite thing she has personally done so far, bearing in mind that Article 50 was a parliamentary vote? So when you look at Brexit and the thing that makes you doubly certain that you voted for the right result, what has the Prime Minister done in 18 months that supports your conviction?
She's triggered Article 50.
I said apart from that, because that was a parliamentary vote.
She's standing firm and against against her own personal wishes. She's not letting that cloud her. She's doing the right thing. There's been a referendum. There's been a vote. Let's do it. And she's going through the process of doing that without wavering at all.
You think she's not wavering?
No, absolutely. When have you ever heard her say, Oh, I don't know if it's a good idea. I don't know if that's... She's not. She's saying...
Well, when she was asked if she'd vote when she was asked if she'd...
got a minister for no deal, no deal now.
You did ask me a question. When have I ever heard her wavering? And the answer is very simple. When she was asked if she'd vote differently in a second referendum, and she refused to answer the question.
It was a pointless and unfair question.
Your question was, when has she ever wavered, Gavin? We're going to go round in circles, and I'm going to go... Do you feel you've had a fair crack of the whip, Gavin? Do you feel you've had a...
Yeah, thank you.
Good. Well, you mind how you go, mate.
Scott Harlow to talk about equal pay. Is it a personal experience of equal pay, a battle, Scott, or is it just a general comment you wanted to make?
It's a bit of both, actually.
All right, go on.
Right, OK. Now, if women want equality, then would you agree that should be... the word equality hints at right across the board, everything you can think of.
Yeah,
Do you agree with that, Sheila?
I do.
OK, then why doesn't that apply to the divorce and family courts, where it falls down heavily in favour of the woman? She usually gets the house, the kids, all of the money, everything, and the guy walks away with nothing, has to get a one-bedroom flat, everything else. You know, you can't argue with statistics right across the Western world.
Yeah,
You've got swathe of guys.
You're right. You're right that there are... It seems to me, I've never gone through a divorce, but that you're right that there are apparently unequal attitudes within the divorce courts and the payment to children, all the rest of it. But each case will be different. However, if you don't mind, I want to keep this strictly within the workplace and issues around the workplace.
OK, well, I've got an answer for that too.
Go on.
And that is, let's look down the street right now. Any listener, do you see guys working in the road? Do you see guys sweeping the streets? Do you see guys up on a roof? Yeah, I do. Do you see women doing any of this? No. Well, that's the one for one reason, because we do it better. Yeah, but en masse, we do it better. Sports, everything, we do it better. There's one thing that women do better than guys, and that is giving birth and rearing children. Sorry to be sexist, but it's true.
Do you think that's sexist?
Yeah, but it's true.
Well, if it's true, it's not sexist, is it? If it's sexist, it's unfair and not true.
No, that's a perversion of the actual meaning of the word in my book.
Oh, is it? You're rewriting the dictionary.
No, I'm not. It's a difference between the sexes. And if you go down if you state a fact and it is deemed to be derogatory, although I don't mean it that way, I'm just stating the truth.
Remind me again what we're good at. Having children and what else?
Conceiving and rearing children.
Sorry, conceiving and rearing children. Okay, so if, for example, I sit next to a man and do the exact same job as him and have exactly the same experience as him and in the same age as him and work in the same company as him, should I be paid less because I have a womb? I'm just trying to check how deep your attitudes to this go. Should I be paid less because I have a womb?
I've got an answer to that as well.
I don't doubt it.
But yeah, when you go out on a date, who pays the tab? Can you answer me?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Again, that massively depends.
Taking a long while.
No, it's taking me a long while because there isn't one answer to it, Scott. That's why.
But you see what I'm getting at?
Well, I do.
A survey in America, they said that the woman gets 77 cents on the dollar what the man makes, and that's for one reason, because what's hers is hers and what's mine is hers. We have to pay for everything. Are
you married or in a relationship?
Absolutely not. I won't have a woman for one simple reason, because the woman that I want doesn't exist nowadays.
Okay. So have you got a man instead?
No.
Oh, I'm just checking whether you were just, experimenting.
I'm quite happy on my own. Because
okay, well, that's a good thing, Scott, because I think if you opened your mouth at an average date, you would remain on your own for quite some time. Thank you for your call anyway.
Why I Regret Saying Gay Sex Is Not a Sin by Tim Farron. And my question for you is, why does religion obsess or care? Obsess is a judgment call. Why does religion so often involve anti-gay teachings? 0345 6060973. Phil's in Borehamwood. Phil, what would you like to say?
Hi, I think I'm going to be a bit of an anticlimax after the last caller, because I'm heterosexual, but I'm an Orthodox Jew.
Yeah.
We believe that we define God as being the creator of the world and creator of life, And as such, he gave us that gift. He gave the gift of creating life to man.
Yes.
So when when men go into a homosexual relationship, it's not that there's any hate or anything, but it's just that we feel that they're not using that gift that God's given us. It's our divine right, divine gift, in the most appropriate way, which is through marriage and through procreation.
This is where the Abrahamic religions diverge, isn't it? Because under that reading of Judaism, and forgive me if I'm wrong, it's not the faith I was raised in, so I don't know it as well as the faith I was raised in. Even celibacy then becomes sinful, arguably. Marriage is a duty, and celibacy is a sin.
But you're talking about it like it's a way of life. We don't
like what's a way of
in
life?
terms of their sexuality. Sex is something you do.
Are you allowed contraception?
In certain circumstances, yes.
But that means you're having sex without creating children.
But that's because it nurtures a loving, caring relationship, which is what this is what.
But there's nothing in the texts about that, is there?
What do you mean?
Well, there's nothing in the Talmud or anywhere else about that. About you can use contraception sometimes because it nurtures a loving relationship. This is the problem I find with.
No. Sorry to correct you.
No, of course you must.
But a husband has obligations to his wife, and without being too gamey about it, that includes giving her what we call honor, which means time, spending time with her, and showing her the love and affection that she needs.
See, again, this is...
and that doesn't necessarily need to involve procreation.
No, but that we're not now talking about choosing contraception when you feel like it and claiming that you can't have sex without creating when you also want to. You are trying to have your cake and eat it. But that is the nature of the more fundamentalist one's religion, the more you do edge towards trying to have your cake and eat it. Because either straight people have to try to have a baby every time they have sex, or... there is a procreation defence of disapproving of gay relationships. You can't have both, can you, Phil?
Well, yes, you can.
Well, I know you can, but I mean, logically you can't.
That's what I'm saying. Is you're looking at it in a very binary yes or no way. A relationship, a marriage is about it's about raising a family, and it's about, as I say, utilising.
So, if a gay couple adopt a child, are they allowed to have sex?
It's not. You see, again, when you talk about allowed, that's not the word we would use.
What would you use?
It's taking a gift that God's given you and not. It's like.
Okay, so if gay people adopt a child, are they? No, hang on. If gay people adopt a child, are they allowed to take the gift that God's given them?
What do you mean, take it?
Well, I'm using your phrases now because you disapproved of mine. The gift that God's given them is sex. Sex is enjoyable because God wants us to enjoy it. It also creates children. You say you shouldn't enjoy it unless you're trying to create a child. I'm just wondering whether if gay people have already got a kid that they've adopted or that they've had through surrogacy or egg donation or whatever it may be, are they allowed to enjoy the gift that God has given to you?
What do you mean enjoy it?
Have it then. Are they allowed to have sex if they've already got a child? I know it's never nice to have religious beliefs that you probably haven't thought that deeply about, properly explored, but if you're trying to argue that sex is fine for straight people because they have children, unless they're using contraception because they don't actually want to have a child, but they're still allowed to enjoy sex, and I'm asking whether a gay family, two gay men who have a family, are they allowed to have sex? I'm sorry, you don't like allowed. Are they allowed to do it? Are they allowed to do sex?
But this is back to what I'm saying, is that they're...
Yes or no?
Wasting is too strong a word, but they've been given a gift. Man has been given a gift by God to create life with a woman, and it's like you...
So contraception's not allowed then? Because it was a minute ago.
It is allowed in a marriage.
But that's not going to create any life.
Pardon?
That's not going to create any life.
But by marrying... and agreeing.
Men get married.
Pardon?
Men get married.
To women?
No, to each other. We're talking about homosexuals at the moment, mostly.
Right.
So men get married and men have sex and men can't have children, and every time you have sex with contraception, you're married, you're having sex, and you can't have children. So what's the difference?
Because we're nurturing a married relationship.
So are they. And they've got a child.
But you have to take into account that Judaism doesn't accept homosexual marriage.
So we are using the word allowed.
It doesn't. In terms of marriage.
Yeah, it's not allowed.
What do you mean allowed? It's when
Well,
we
it's not
define
accepted.
marriage,
It's not allowed. These are synonyms, aren't they, in the context of this conversation?
we define marriage in terms of a heterosexual union.
Right.
We don't define it in terms of a homosexual.
And how would you feel if gay people wanted to define what your marriage meant?
But it's what we. It's based on the Bible, based on the Torah that goes back thousands of years.
Yeah.
You can't come along years later.
And what does that say about contraception?
Pardon?
And what does that say about contraception? That several thousand-year-old teaching that you're using to justify your belief that gay sex is somehow sinful?
I didn't say gay sex was sinful.
Well, that's what the whole phone-in's about. You can use whatever word you want.
This is what I've deliberately tried to steer you away from, is to say that it's not. We wouldn't say.
No, hang on. The bit in the ancient text about contraception being okay. I just want a quick heads up on that.
Pardon, say it again.
The bit in the ancient texts about contraception being okay. I just want the heads up on that.
What do you want me to say?
Well, where is it?
It's part of a loving, caring relationship. If you're in a relationship with a woman, of course you are.
So you're allowed to have sex that doesn't lead to the creation of life, but gay people aren't.
As part of a marriage.
Just to be clear. Okay, that's fine. We got there in the end. Oh, boy. It's coming up to 11 o'clock. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, who rather controversially believes that everybody should be allowed to have sex with whoever consents to having sex with them. But that apparently makes me sinful. Dominus vobiscum, my friend. A simple question about Brexit Britain. Here is the newly installed Minister for Departing the European Union speaking 6 months ago.
You're absolutely right. And this figure of 50 billion doesn't have any legal basis whatsoever. It's been manufactured. And it doesn't seem likely that there will be such a bill for £50 billion. It's part of Project Fear. Health warning, don't believe it. We pay into the European Investment Bank, and so actually we're going to get a windfall from leaving. So I think that the scaremongering about having to pay to leave is just not true. We have a lot to gain. Our best days lie ahead, and we're going to be enjoying the freedoms and enjoying the benefits that we gain from leaving.
So, to focus on that sentence, the scaremongering about having to pay to leave is just not true. It has now been agreed that we'll pay just shy of £40 billion. So it wasn't scaremongering. She has a point on the legal basis, in the same sense that I can't think of a meaningful analogy, but we could, I suppose, have just refused to pay, but that would have been akin to cutting off both our feet as opposed to just cutting off one of them. So the line we focus on, scaremongering about having to pay to leave, is just not true. So don't believe it. It's now been proven to be true. We are paying to leave. How come she got promoted? And I'll take any answer you've got. And I may try not even to argue on this one, because I just want to know what your understanding of how someone can say in public, it's just not true, we won't have to pay to leave, we are paying to leave, she got a promotion. Michael's in Hampstead. Michael, how do you make sense of this?
Hi. I think it's perfectly clear. We are not paying anything that we weren't already committed to paying.
But she said we wouldn't have to pay that.
No, she said we wouldn't have to pay to leave, and we're not paying to leave. These are sums which, or in fact, much greater sums that we would have been paying had we remained members.
No, let's listen again. Let's just listen again.
Hold on a second.
No, let's be clear that we're both talking about the same thing, Michael.
No, let's.
All right, let's not listen to what she said. Let's listen to what you want us to think she said, then.
No.
Well, let's listen to what she said, then.
You've played it 3 times already, so I don't need to.
Well, she said scaremongering about having to pay to leave is just not true. Don't believe it. She said we won't have to pay.
It is not paying to leave.
So the bill that we're paying isn't the bill she was talking about?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
Because we're not paying anything we weren't already obliged to pay. If we remained members of the EU, we would have had to pay these sums plus vastly greater sums. And the fact is that Remainers like yourself just want us to believe that these are sums which would somehow or other have gone away if we'd stayed members of the EU.
I'm not making any position myself. Let's listen again to what she said. No, we're just going to. And then we'll have a look at it through the lens of you suggesting that when she talked about the bill that we are paying, she wasn't, when she talked about the bill that we wouldn't pay, talking about the bill that we've now agreed we will pay. We'll just check together. OK? Let's go.
You're absolutely right. And this figure of 50 billion doesn't have any legal basis whatsoever. It's been manufactured. And it doesn't seem likely that there will be such a bill for for £50 billion. It's part of Project Fear. Health warning, don't believe it. We pay into the European Investment Bank, and so actually we're going to get a windfall from leaving. So I think that the scaremongering about having to pay to leave is just not true. We have a lot to gain. Our best days lie ahead.
So it doesn't seem likely that there will be such a bill, and scaremongering about having to pay to leave is just not true. And I promise I'm trying to understand you properly, Michael. You're suggesting that she's not talking about the bill that we are paying. She was talking about another bill that we might have had to pay but now won't and never would.
Indeed.
OK, no, that's definitely a view. It's 11:39. Hayden is in Catford. If you agree with Michael, I'd love to hear from you. She wasn't talking about the... Well, hang on, Michael, come back a minute. What was she talking about?
No, hold on a second. You're claiming to be impartial.
Well, you just called me a Remainer. You can't call me impartial and a Remainer in the course of the same phone call, unless we've left logic at the door.
I didn't call you impartial. I said you're claiming to try to be impartial.
No, I'm not.
Indeed, earlier on in the day...
No, I'm not.
She said, I'm doing my very best to be impartial.
Yes, we were talking about homosexuality and religion.
No, we were talking about...
Oh, mate, look, let's talk about you, OK? And your belief that Suella Fernandez was not talking about the EU departure bill when she appeared on Question Time and answered a question about the EU departure bill. Just talk me through your logic.
You are claiming to be impartial.
Oh, mate.
But in fact...
Here we go.
Fact, you continuously play things which are prejudicial on one side. You're not playing anything on the other side.
What would you like me to play? Misty?
No, I'd like you to be sensible.
What would you like me to play? I'll play it now. And then you can answer my question.
Okay. Michael Gove talking about Brexit.
Okay, Michael Gove talking about the Brexit bill.
Hold on a second.
Which clip? Which bit?
How about Jeremy Corbyn expressing an opinion as to whether he wants to stay in the European Union or whether he wants to leave the European Union?
Okay, I'll dig that out and then I'll play it later, and then you tell me what it is, what bill she was talking about when she said scaremongering about having to pay to leave is just not true, and she also said it doesn't seem likely that there will be such a bill. So what is the bill that she was talking about?
You were claiming...
Oh, Michael.
You were claiming... No, hold on a second. You were claiming that everybody who voted Brexit didn't care about what happens in the future. Now, the basis of that is we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But if we had voted...
But we know what happened in the past. We know what happened in the past, and she spoke about a bill. What bill was she talking about, Michael?
No, you're not listening to me. We would not know what would have happened if we had remained in the European Union.
No, that's true. Say more stuff, and then I'll ask you the question again.
We're seeing ever closer union, which is what they want. Yep. We're seeing talk of a European army. We're talking about common defence policy. Yep. We're talking about bank harmonisation, tax harmonisation.
Yeah, except we're not.
All these things.
We're talking about Suella Fernandez, and your contention that the bill she was talking about 6 months ago is demonstrably and substantively different from the bill the government has agreed to pay. So what bill was she talking about, Michael?
She was talking about a bill to pay to leave the European Union. These are...
Well, hang on, you said a minute ago she wasn't.
No, she talked about a bill to leave the European Union.
It doesn't seem likely that there will be any such bill.
We are not paying anything which the United Kingdom was not already obliged to pay.
It doesn't seem likely that there will be any such bill. She categorically said we weren't obliged to pay anything. You know this is true. This is a stupid argument, Michael. You can disagree about lots of other stuff, but we both know that she was talking about the bill that we're paying.
You agreed with her that there was no legal basis. It's a totally political sanction.
Which is why we're looking at... It doesn't seem likely that there will be such a bill. So what is the bill she was talking about if it's not the one we've agreed to pay?
Well, we're talking about the ones where there is a legal basis. We have entered into commitments with the European Union to pay certain sums over future years, and these are the sums of money which we're now...
So scaremongering about having to pay to leave is just not true. Is that statement true or false?
It's true.
So she was wrong when she said it?
No.
We're not paying to leave?
We're not paying to leave. We're paying to meet our legal obligations.
As a precursor to what?
As a precursor to nothing.
As a precursor to nothing? So why are we paying to meet our legal obligations?
Well, you're not paying to meet your legal obligations.
These are your words. I can't do this anymore. I literally just repeated your own words to you.
You didn't. You have legal obligations, and when you have legal obligations, you have to meet them.
Right.
And that's what we're doing. We're not paying anything extra to leave the European Union.
Let's listen to it again, just so that everybody else listening to the programme can be clear that you are clear. You don't have to listen. You don't have to listen. Seriously, you can head back off to the unicorn farm. But everybody else likes to know rather than just believe.
You're absolutely right. And this figure of 50 billion doesn't have any legal basis whatsoever. It's been manufactured. And it doesn't seem likely that there will be such a bill for £50 billion. It's part of Project Fear. Health warning, don't believe it. You know, we pay into the European Investment Bank, and so actually we're going to get a windfall from leaving. So I think that the scaremongering about having to pay to leave is just not true. We have a lot to gain. Our best days lie ahead, and we're going to be enjoying the freedoms and enjoying the benefits that we gain from leaving.
Right, so, are you still there? Good.
Yes, I am still here.
What is she talking about? Where is this 50 billion figure? Where did it come from?
Oh, because the Cameron government didn't tell us about it.
Oh, Lord.
Did they?
No, on Question Time 6 months ago, when she talked about the £50 billion figure and said we wouldn't have to pay it, what figure was she talking about?
Do you live on a unicorn farm? Because you just told me that I live on a unicorn farm.
So where did that £50 billion come from?
Are you a good quality journalist or not? Do you believe in calling your callers in by name?
Well, I respond to evidence and arrive at conclusions. You're more than welcome to disprove my call. £50 billion, what figure is she talking about?
Do you believe in a unicorn farm?
I do believe in unicorn farms. I believe in unicorn farms. There, it's given. So there we go. We're fine. You can insult me, I'll insult you. Everything's cool. Now we're back to the substantive question in hand.
Insulting you. I'm just repeating what you said. You believe in unicorn farms, and you believe that I live on one.
£50 billion. What figure is she talking about?
I've told you several times. You're not prepared.
No. What is she talking about? When she said the £50 billion figure, what was she talking about?
A bill to leave the European Union.
It's 11:45.
Britain's last lion tamer is planning to apply for a licence to tour England this summer, despite a government pledge to ban the use of wild animals in travelling circuses. Thomas Chipperfield's family has been training circus animals for around 300 years. Joined by the trainer himself, Thomas Chipperfield, and also director of Peter, Eliza Allen. Hello to you both. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. Eliza, you go first. Why is it a bad idea?
You know, it is obscene that in 2008 that we still have to have this conversation. Most people understand that animals are not objects of ridicule. They are not ours to use, to abuse, to exploit for the sake of entertainment. In the UK, every animal protection group in this country, including the British Veterinary Association, recognized that animals' complex needs can simply not be met in a circus environment. Over 90% of respondents to government consultation on the issue support a ban, and yet here we are. It's 2018. It's time for the government to stop dragging its heels and to follow suit, as Scotland, as Ireland, as Italy have done, and take decisive action to ban these cruel, archaic institutions.
Okay. Thomas, there you go. Your response to that?
Well, very firstly, I don't wish to start with an ad hominem, but I think it's important to know where my fellow guest is coming from. Peter is a fanatical group that has alleged financial links to terrorism, which supports its cause, supports pseudoscience.
Right
no, just one second. This is stuff that's been extensively reported.
Thomas, that's your view and not that of Sky or any other. Do you want to talk about lion taming or not?
It has been reported on numerous occasions.
Okay, do you want to talk about lion taming or not?
So if you could just let me finish for 1 second.
Do you want to talk about lion taming or not?
No, I'm responding to the claims made by my fellow guest. If you'd give me the chance to, I'd like to do that.
Okay, let me just put this out there. If you talk about terrorism again, we're going to have to say goodbye. Up to you. What do you want to say?
I'm just saying that's what's been reported in the past. I'm allowed to say that.
No, you're not.
Am I not?
No, you're not.
It's untrue, Thomas.
Hold on. Doesn't matter, really. I'm in charge of this programme. Thomas, what do you want to say about lion taming?
Right, OK, well, then I'll just move directly to the points made by my fellow guest. There is no ban going on in Italy. That's, and I hate to use this term, but it is fake news. It's just not happening at all. There's no documentary evidence to support that whatsoever. in regards to the British Veterinary Association, they themselves have not carried out any scientific studies into this matter. They've based their opinion on a review that has been proven to have been set up. People whose work has actually contributed to this review, have stated that their data was distorted 180 degrees.
Okay, why do you want to tame lions out of interest? Why do you want to tame lions?
Can I talk about public opinion quickly?
No, you can answer the questions. That's how this works. Why do you want to tame lions?
I'm responding to the points that
do you want to tame lions? Why do you want to tame lions? Oh, goodness me. Lies, do you want to come in while I try and figure out how we're going to deal with this? Why do you think that people want to see lions being tamed? Lies.
Well, the fact is that they don't. As I said, over 90% of respondents to a government consultation in this country support a ban on wild animal circuses. And you know what? That makes sense. It is frankly obscene to deny animals their freedom, to tour them up and down the country, cart them around and force them to perform demeaning, silly, and painful tricks for the sake of human entertainment. There are countless ways that we can entertain ourselves today that don't involve exploiting and harming animals.
Okay, let Thomas come back on that. Way you go, Thomas.
Okay, public opinion. DEFRA found that 6,000 residents of the UK supported a ban. It's not 95% of the British public. 6,000 British residents responded to that. Scotland, with their own public opinion poll, got 1,000 residents. The Welsh Assembly got less than 900. And to counter that, there were actually 53,000 signatures in a petition to have yourself, Miss Burley, dismissed from your position at Sky News in response to your handling of the Nick Varney interview.
Okay, well done. You've done your research.
So
why do you want to tame lions?
Because I enjoy working with these animals, and they actually enjoy doing it as well. All the scientific data that exists supports that.
Don't be ridiculous. Lions want to run at 50 miles an hour, don't they, along the savannah? They don't want to be whipped and tamed in a ring.
Are you speaking from a position of expertise or not?
I know quite a lot about lions, yeah.
Well, you obviously don't know enough.
I know quite a lot about lions,
I think that as your... No, I'm sorry, but I do have to say this. As a de facto moderator of this debate, it's your duty to be impartial, and you're not fulfilling that duty.
I'm asking you, I'm playing devil's advocate, I'm asking you to answer questions, which you're not doing. All you're doing is being abusive both to me and to my fellow guests, which I'm not going to tolerate.
I'm sorry, what was that last point?
I said you're being abusive to my fellow guest. You're raising issues that are not... Yeah, you were. Yeah, you were. I'm asking... And also, I'm asking you why you feel that lions... OK, I'll come back to you when I can get a word in edgeways. Elias, he has a point. People do go and watch lions being tamed. They do want to go and see animals in circuses. It's not for you to tell the greater public what they should and shouldn't be doing.
You know what, it's a very, very small minority of people who still think that it is acceptable to deny animals their freedom, their liberty for the sake of entertainment. As I said, today, most compassionate people around the world recognize that animals are simply not ours to exploit for the sake of entertainment. And that's what this comes down to. For Thomas and other animal abusers, the writing's on the wall. The momentum is on our side. We're seeing governments around the world ban these institutions, and it's only a matter of time before the government in England and Wales does the same.
OK. Thomas, you're an animal abuser, we're told by PETA.
Yeah, are you going to rush to my defence on that one, Miss Burley?
I'm going to ask you to answer the question. Do you want to answer the question?
Well, there's no scientific evidence whatsoever to suggest that myself or any other competent animal trainer is actually abusing their animals at all. It's not based on any scientific understanding of animals.
OK. Do you think that your lion or lions enjoy what happens to them?
Well, according to all of the vets and zoo consultants that I speak to, their well-being hasn't suffered for it in any way whatsoever.
OK, my question was, do you think they enjoy it?
I do find that they are actually very happy and comfortable in their work. Yes, I do.
And how do they show that to you?
Through positive displays of their behaviour.
Give me an example.
Emotional behaviour, I would say.
Give me an example.
Sorry?
Give me an example.
example, friendly behaviour, such as friendly verbal expressions, like an eagerness to maintain close physical contact with myself and the like.
I'm guessing that's not because they want to eat you. I don't know, Eliza, why do you... So, you know, there you go. They are enjoying themselves. They're showing behaviour towards Thomas where they want to be close to him. They seem relaxed. The vets are saying that they're relaxed. Again, you know, if that's the case, what's your problem?
I don't know who Thomas is speaking to. As I said at the beginning, every single animal protection group, every animal welfare expert in this country agrees that a wild animal's complex needs cannot be met in a circus environment. Of course, Thomas has a vested interest in defending his business. He is exploiting animals for profit, and we should remember that.
We started with you, so we must finish with Thomas. Final word to you, Thomas.
Okay, well, again, you can say I have a vested interest in this, but the animal rights industry is worth millions and millions and millions around the world. And my fellow guest is actually wrong to say that all animal welfare experts in this country or anywhere else agree with her. That's just not the case whatsoever.
Okay. Okay, it's good to talk to both of you. Final point on clarity, though, Thomas. It was actually 60,000 people who signed that petition for me to get sacked. I'm still here. Good to talk to you. Thank you.
Another Simon in Brixton. Hello there. You disagree, don't you, Simon?
Hello, yes, I do. I think it's sort of deeply immoral, really, to have more than 2 children. We live on a planet
deeply immoral?
Yeah.
I must tell my mum.
Well, you know, back then maybe things are different, but let's face it, we have contraception now, and I think it's a really good thing that the government said, look, yeah, you can have as many children as you like, but we're not going to pay for any more than 2. The child maintenance allowance is just for 2 children to discourage people.
So if you have more than 2 children, do you have to... Let's extrapolate your idea. If you have more than 2 children, do you have to pay for their education as well at the local state school?
It's not so much to me about the money. The fact is we do live on a planet of finite resources. In the past, we solved overpopulation in the UK by colonising America and Africa and Australia at the expense of the people there. In China, they had mass famine when they had overpopulation. Then they introduced the one-child rule, and now they don't have mass famine anymore. It's a really big issue, and I think people just sort of sweep it under the carpet. And the vasectomy idea, that has been used successfully in India. They give people cash payments and willingly, or football tickets and things like that, and people don't want to have more children. They're a burden, and they take it up, and the population...
Well, you can't say, you can't say for certain that everybody thinks their child is a burden. How do you know? When did they tell you that?
Not everyone, but in lots of countries and for lots of people, having lots of children is an economic burden, not only on the environment but on people's lifestyle. If everyone had 2 children, there'd be more resources.
And you don't think, but you don't think the manner in which we consume our resources has can be looked at. I mean, even that recent report that showed how little, for example, of the UK is built up. You know, the picture that you and others paint of the UK is of it bursting at the seams with people, literally no space, nowhere to grow any more carrots. We're all going to starve if we keep having children. It's nonsense.
Well, it's not, because every person needs a few acres of land for the food and the water. One person doesn't just take up a square metre. Every person requires a number of acres. And I think the issue is confused because the Nazis decided who should breed, and then ethnic cleansing was used as an excuse to reduce population. No. Like charities like Population Matters and these groups, they want people to be softly encouraged to just have 2 children. I mean, paying for vasectomies, I mean, really, why not? It's not a fascist thing. It's
softly, hang on. There was softly encouraged. Let me remind you of his words at the time. If we don't do this, it'll mean we'll be drowning in a vast sea of unemployed wasters that we pay to keep. That's not soft encouragement or an intelligent conversation about family planning, both of which are fine conversations to have. That's almost, you said the N-word before me, it's almost eugenics.
I don't think it is, and I think a lot of people are seeing that the most intelligent, hard-working and educated people are not having children. They're putting it off. They're just having one or even not at all, whereas the less intelligent people on society, which are dependent, are having more children. It's a problem.
So you're equating the number of children you have with intelligence.
It often is the case that the poorest,
sometimes
smokers are having more and more children than the more intelligent people in society.
Smokers.
It's the opposite of evolution in a way, isn't it? It's the least intelligent people in society having more children. You can see it everywhere. Most intelligent, educated people just have 2.
It's everywhere.
If you go through the poor places in Brixton, it's always people with big families who often don't work that have the most children.
Why? What research have you done? Have you stood there counting them, speaking to them, getting their names and addresses, seeing how many more children they have?
It's anecdotal.
Yeah, I thought it might be. Simon, thank you for your call anyway.
But I need to know a little bit more about the whys before we do the whats. 5 million quid means that £5 million worth of NHS expertise it backs homeopathy, I think. I could be reading it wrong. Mike's in Marlow. Mike, what would you like to say? Jacob. Is Mike there? 24 minutes after 11. It doesn't matter. As long as there is a tiny, tiny, tiny part of Mike on the line, diluted to the power of about 10 million, then I can continue the conversation with him under the rules and regulations, the principles of homeopathy. If you know why £5 million worth of public money is spent every year on sending patients to homeopathic hospitals, I'd love to hear from you. And my sort of example of the holy water and the baby born with a club foot is not silly. I do mean it. The simple state of affairs is that people believe in something, and occasionally the thing that they believe in actually happens. You will never persuade them. It's like the crutches and the wheelchairs abandoned at the pilgrimage site of Lourdes in France. You'll never persuade them that there isn't a link between the two things, and it's unkind to try to. So that's why we're focusing on the public money question. Mike is in Marlow. Mike, what would you like to say?
Yeah, good morning, James. I've been dying to get on this one with you. My wife's a homeopath. I've got friends that are homeopaths. I've been using it pretty much all my life. I don't even know my doctor's name. That's how effective it is.
You should probably find out in case you ever get poorly.
But that's the point. There's 6.5 million people, James, that use alternative medicine every year, and you're upping on about 5 million quid's worth of drugs. It doesn't even compare.
Well, there's no drugs involved.
Of the population.
There's no drugs involved, is there?
Well, there's all right. Remedies. Let's get.
No, I think this is treatment. I think if there's a homeopathic hospital, that 5 million quid is going to be spent on everything from the heating bills to. I'm not sure. I don't know actually. I don't know enough about it. No. But I mean, what would you do if you got? Forgive me, Mike, but I'm going to ask you a couple of robust questions, if that's okay.
Yeah. Of course.
What would you do if you got cancer?
I would seek the appropriate treatment.
Right, so make sure you find out your doctor's name and get registered sharpish, all right?
Well, not necessarily.
So you mean the appropriate treatment might not be medicine?
It might not be, no, it could be all sorts of things. Okay. But that's the point, you see. If you've got this closed mind on everything, then nothing's gonna sway you. But the point is...
Well, no, of course something's going to sway me, Mike. Peer-reviewed evidence will sway me.
Well, listen, ask 6.5 million people why they use alternative medicine.
Yeah, but that's not peer-reviewed medicine. That's anecdote.
No, it's not anecdote, James. It's fact.
No.
It's fact.
The 6.5 million people use alternative medicine. Now you prove that it's cured anything. That's where the facts come in.
Of course it has. I mean, listen, I had an ingrown toenail. I mean, it sorted that out. I mean, there's all 101 things that will sort out an ingrown.
What do you take for an ingrowing toenail?
Either magnetic north or magnetic south, depending on which toe it is, which foot it is. You see, now that's really going to throw you, isn't it?
Well, no, it's the opposite. I'll tell you what you have done.
What?
You've persuaded me completely that it has to be banned.
No, nonsense.
But mate, you're going to get into all sorts of bother with these beliefs.
I'm not in any sorts of bother.
No,
I'm nearly 60 years old.
Not
I'm
yet.
Absolute rude health.
Yeah, but if you get really poorly and you try and cure it with, I don't know, voodoo, I'm going to miss you, Mike.
No.
I'm going to really miss you, Mike.
Terminology.
Yeah.
Listen, I ain't going anywhere, mate.
All right, and what are your
terminology, James?
How long did your wife study to become a homeopath?
Sorry?
How long did your wife study to become a homeopath?
Oh, years and years and years.
Well, how many years and years and years?
Oh, I can't remember. I don't know. 4 or 5 years, something like that.
Full-time study?
Yeah.
Where did she go?
And then no, James. Listen, do not poo-poo it. I think you need to read up on it. Can
I poo-poo it if I use a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of poo diluted to 1 million parts of water?
You see, this is part of your rhetoric. This tiny.
It's homeopathy, Mike. There's no peer-reviewed evidence for it at all.
There is, James. You need to read into this before you start slagging it off again. Honestly, mate.
All right, mate. What should I read first?
I don't know. I'm not the homeopath, but there's plenty of studies.
Well, what did you read
plenty
then?
Of reasons why.
What did you read that persuaded you it's the real deal?
I don't need to read anything, mate. I've got my wife and friends of mine are homeopaths, and they're all.
So if I read something, then I'd be as persuaded as you are that it works. But you haven't read anything, and you can't recommend anything to me to read.
No, I've got 20 years of using homeopathy and not going to my GP. Surely that's evidence enough, isn't it?
Oh, mate. Did you vote Brexit?
No, I didn't.
Have a great weekend, Mike, really. Because that's 20, that's evidence. No, it's not blinking evidence. That just means you haven't been poorly for 20 years. Ah, dear. It could be. Jill's in Isha. Jill, what would you like to say? How could she have done it better?
Oh, good morning. Quite simply, by just not being so pusillanimous.
Go on.
She should have just gone in there and she should have said, we're leaving, right, these are the deals, this is what we're going to do, and walked away and said, take it or leave it.
She has done that.
So, no,
that's what Article 50 is.
Pathetic. No.
I apologise for interrupting you, but let's just get some facts on the table. Yes, I am, but because it's very important that my listeners aren't misled. Article 50 puts a 2-year limit on leaving. She triggered it much quicker than most people thought she should have done, so she gave them the message that we would walk away much earlier than anybody else would have advised. And the second point is the red lines that she's put in place about the things we will not compromise on tell them exactly where we stand. The problem is, Jill, and your analysis perhaps has to ignore this point, is the European Union didn't blink.
But what have we got to lose? You know, the problem is she should have got real
freedom of movement, between 28 countries, access to the largest single market in the world, membership of the largest single market in the world, freedom to trade with the largest single market in the world, plus the treaties delivered. No, you asked me a question. What have we got to lose, Jill?
No, you asked me a question and interrupted my answer.
Because you were telling porkies.
No, I was not.
So how could she have triggered Article 50 sooner?
She could have done it the next day.
So you think she should have done it even sooner?
She should, yeah, absolutely.
Right, and how would that have been different?
And said, but she's the pathetic way she's going about
Yes, but these are just adjectives. We're dealing in substance.
No, yes, well, we want to do this, we want to be this. You know, I want somebody in the true Remain camp, like yourself. Give me a good reason why we should say. You keep saying to me, but if it's Brexit, we're falling off a cliff, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. You know, what's going to happen? Could you tell me what would happen if we stayed in the EU?
Yes, your life would be exactly the same as it is now.
No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't, because they started. We would have unlimited immigration. I don't care about immigration. That's not why I voted.
Well, tell me what you do care about, Jill. Otherwise, this is going to be a slightly odd exchange.
Right? Yes. I care that there are 751 MEPs that are transported every month 400 kilometres between Brussels and Strasbourg.
You asked me what.
No,
I said things would stay the same, and you said they wouldn't.
Yes.
So what would be different then?
Well, because they're insisting that we would have to be part of the euro. I don't want.
No, we wouldn't. We don't have to be part of the euro. Anyone who told you that lied to you. Next.
Well, that's what you believe.
No. That is recorded fact.
No, that is what you think.
Okay, so you think that the United Kingdom could have been forced to join the euro? I can't. I love you, Jill. You're a lovely, lovely woman. But if you say things that are demonstrably untrue and then just get louder when I point out that they're demonstrably untrue, I think we let our listeners down.
I hate the fact that you say all I voted Brexit was because I wanted a blue passport.
I've never met you, Jill.
I think... No, you generalise on the whole...
Well, tell me what you did vote for, then.
Well, I've just told you when you keep interrupting
No, you
me.
told me that you don't like the number of MEPs, but that was in response to asking me what would have happened if we'd remained. I said things would stay the same, and you started talking about 751 MEPs. I don't want to embarrass you, Jill, but all I can do is repeat your words back to you.
You're not embarrassing me at all.
Well, that's a relief.
You're embarrassing yourself.
You're absolutely right.
Your comments are so pathetic that you think there would be...
Who's more pathetic, me or Theresa May? Who's more pathetic?
You're both pathetic.
Okay. Well, can I be more pathetic?
I wasn't going to be, actually. I wanted to be really nice. I didn't want to.
Still free to be nice, Jill. It's not my fault. It's not. I have no control over what you see in the mirror.
But you want to be ruled by unelected bureaucrats in Brussels, do you?
Well, you want to be ruled by Theresa May, who you think is pathetic and pusillanimous.
I really was angry the day that they got her.
So you voted Corbyn, did you?
Furious. No, I didn't.
Oh, I thought not. It's 11:02. And I'm trying to write something at the moment about political correctness, and it's tough, you know, because I can't see it in the way that often older, not always people do. Maybe it's because I was too busy in the 80s, going out and enjoying myself, and for most of the 90s as well, actually. But I never really registered clamorous calls for social change. I look back on it now, and those claims that they'd banned the word blackboard in case it was racist and you weren't allowed to have Christmas. It was all nonsense. Presumably just a little bit before my time. It was all whipped up by the same newspapers for the same reasons. Don't worry about the facts, just focus on the fury. And that now feeds into a perception that whenever anything happens that some people consider to be social progress, other people reach for the political correctness gone mad. Here is a Renault driver, Nico Hulkenberg, responding to the announcement yesterday that Formula One was doing away with grid girls. He said it would be a pity if they took the eye jewellery from the grid. And I think that's brilliant, because I think now you can pick a side. Women as eye jewellery, or no, actually, not as a career option. Adam's in Walthamstow. Adam, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Good to talk to you again. James, I'm actually an ex-Renault Formula One driver as well. Back in 2009, I test drove for the team, and I've sort of raced in all the junior categories right up to Formula One. So I'm pretty well qualified to speak on this subject.
Well, you're pretty well qualified to speak on Formula One. I don't know how qualified you are to speak on feminism.
Maybe not feminism, but I've got a baby daughter due in a few days' time anyway.
Congratulations.
So I'll come on to that in a minute.
Yes.
Thank you. I mean, in terms of the grid girls, I mean, a lot of them are actually aspiring models. I've had plenty of conversations with them, from China to Australia, New Zealand, wherever. A lot of them have aspirations to use their looks to make a career. So I don't really see what the problem is there. Secondly, a lot of them actually get, very, very good pay for the day. A lot of them are students studying. They just want to earn a few extra quid.
I can see this defence, and I can see it clearly. But oddly, it's not me that you take that up with, really. It's Formula One, because what you're really saying now is that they shouldn't be free to make a decision like this because you've met some models.
Well, I do think Liberty Media are missing a trick, because obviously the good girls like Nico's, said in his Twitter post, they do add the element of they are eye candy.
Eye jewellery. Eye jewellery was the phrase.
Eye jewellery, okay, fine.
And that for me is that for me, and of course now what we end up doing as men is defending the right of women to be eye jewellery, whereas the feminist position, as I understand it, and my understanding may be meagre, the feminist position would be that it's only because of society's structures that women have ended up thinking being eye jewellery is something they should aspire to. And I don't think we want to raise young women who think that ending up as eye jewellery for men like you is an ambition. A cool ambition. Any more than growing up in 1967, growing up believing that it's okay for your husband to slap you around.
James, say that to Naomi Campbell or Kate Moss. They seem to have done okay out of being eye jewellery. So what's to say that other women can't do the same? Well, no one's
calling for. Okay, well, you asked me a question. I can't answer it if you keep talking.
Sorry.
Okay, so the comparison between grid girls and supermodels is the one that you're making, because aspiring to be one of the most successful and well-paid women on the planet doesn't seem to me to be the same as aspiring to be an umbrella holder on a Formula One grid.
Yeah, but James, you're comparing chalk and cheese.
No, you are, mate. You're comparing Naomi Campbell to some woman in lederhosen carrying an umbrella around for Nico Rosenberg.
But Naomi Campbell would have had to start somewhere, as anybody.
I think she could have ended up a suit. So, okay, I understand. You're suggesting that if it wasn't for grid girls, there wouldn't be any supermodels?
But they're making... No, I'm not saying that, but they're making a career choice. Nobody's forcing them into it.
And that's what we said about society defining the choices. That bit was pretty clear. The idea is that aspiring to be eye jewellery for men like you is something that should be either encouraged or discouraged. I would discourage it. Formula One agree with me. Aspiring to be a supermodel seems to me to be rather different. And you could, I suppose...
No, it's not, because it's the same thing, James. It's still being eye jewellery. to men.
It's about power as well, isn't it?
Serving and titillating, whatever you were saying.
It's about power because supermodels are selling clothes to women.
Really.
Supermodels are selling clothes to women. What are grid girls selling?
Well, they're adding the element of glamour and looking beautiful to that sporting environment.
Yes, so they're not like supermodels at all.
I don't think it's good or bad.
Well, you did a minute ago. You didn't just say PC gone mad with a straight face, did you?
Because, well, James, look, I'm talking because I'm saying it from the perspective that I've actually met them and spoken to them and had actually quite in-depth conversation with them.
That's absolutely great, but let's focus on the words that you use. What does political correctness mean?
Girls in China, but all over the place.
I heard you the first time. What does political correctness mean?
Well, this is pro-feminist agenda, really, that seems to be forced upon everyone.
What does feminist mean?
Well, James, you're attacking me, right?
I'm asking you questions about the words you've just used, so you can pick either political correctness or feminist and tell me what you understand those words to mean.
Well, there should be elements of political correctness, I agree.
What does it mean?
In this case, it's some...
What do you mean when you use that phrase?
Trying to make everybody totally equal, which sadly in society will never ever
How on
happen.
earth is getting rid of grid girls trying to make everybody completely equal?
Yeah, but James, men and women, they're different. You can't say everybody has to be homogenous.
Nobody has, Adam. Somebody has said, what does political correctness mean?
Well, you're asking me to define something that's in the dictionary, James.
No, I'm asking you to define the phrase you just used. It's not really unkind of me. Or we can, if you're not comfortable telling me what you meant when you said political correctness gone mad, you could tell me what you meant when you said feminist, as a sounding negative.
Well, I do think there is that element to do with this decision that Liberty Media have taken. Like I say, it's a pretty trivial subject, but I think it's representative of what's happening in society.
So no. What does feminist mean when you use it like that? When you say it's a pro-feminist thing, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think it's this notion that women are not equal to men in society. I think in many ways women actually have more rights than men.
What about on the Formula One grid? How many men are employed?
I've had a conversation with Maria de Villota. She's passed away, unfortunately. She was a Formula One driver. Susie Stoddart, she was a Formula One driver.
That's
so
two
you can't tell me
people.
that women aren't given opportunities to be as equal to the men in a sport such as Formula One, which
I can,
I
Adam.
agree, is predominantly...
I can, but you just said it yourself. Actually, I'll just be quiet. You're arguing with yourself now. It's quite fun.
I'm not.
You are.
Okay, James.
Any more on what political correctness means?
James, you're reverting back to the same
I'm just asking you to
same
define a phrase that you used, because whenever I ask people what they mean by that, they fall apart. And I don't mean to be rude, although sometimes I enjoy pointing out people's peculiar positions. I don't hold you responsible for it, because how many times, Adam, would you estimate you've heard the phrase PC gone mad?
Loads of times.
And how many times have you stopped to wonder what it means?
Well, I suppose it defines an underlying sentiment. Maybe it's not the right definition to use. But
so next time you hear it, take a moment and wonder what it means.
Okay.
That's all I'm doing. Because it seems to me to mean, in your mouth, very, very little.
What would you define the sentiment as, then?
Well, I don't know what sentiment you think you're describing with the words that you can't define.
The frustration that people...
feel that we're putting too much effort into promoting equality.
When there is, in fact, plenty of equality in society.
Says a man.
James. Would I feel that my daughter has any less equality than my son?
Well, let's wait until she's born. Let's wait until she's born, okay? And then maybe count the FTSE 100s, count the Formula One drivers, count the pretty much any profession you want, except, as you pointed out yourself with your reference to supermodels, the professions that depend almost entirely upon physical attributes. And then get back to me and tell me whether or not you feel your daughter has the same opportunities as your son. And then after we've done that, and I wish you all the very best for her imminent birth, we can see whether she's got a better idea of what political correctness means than you and every other person I have ever spoken to who uses it casually and comfortably as a pejorative without knowing what it means. Because I'll tell you what it means. It means stop trying to be nice to each other.
Alex in Pimlico, hello there.
Afternoon, Sheila. We've spoken before. You talk about this issue with Bristol, and it goes on in many places around the UK.
Mm-hmm.
You cut into the subject about President Roberto Duarte. Well, okay, so we in the Western civilised, supposed world have done since the Second World War, the war on drugs, okay? And now, in England, what happens is the drug dealers get arrested, they get represented, they get custody, and it goes to court, smack your hands, rinse and repeat, they're out on the door and they're doing more of it. So this rehabilitation doesn't work. What Duarte's done, and he actually was very rude to Obama, and I won't swear on there, but he was very rude, told Obama where to go and mind his own business.
I know, he's great mates with Trump.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
But he's doing the only real war on drugs, right? And I know people from the Philippines, from downtown Manila, who go there regularly to see family. They tell me, and these are young girls, and they tell me, who work in a CAF, they tell me that downtown Manila is safer and quieter than it's ever been before. Because, yes, the police have killed 10,000 drug dealers and addicts, and there may have been some collateral damage. It may be mission creep. But it's working, it's worked. We don't like it because we're Western liberal, whatever. And what they're doing in Bristol, they've had enough. Direct action is the only thing that's going to work for them, and that's what they're doing. Like it or not, they've had enough of pushing people away, the police going around, the council workers. Nothing works. And some of these people don't want to be off the street as well, Sheila.
Are you telling me that if you saw a policy in this country where homeless people who were drug addicts were shot dead to clear them away, you wouldn't be against that policy?
I didn't say about the homeless people. I would say dealers. Either we
no, but the problem with the
or you kill the drug dealers. You're never going to solve it.
No, but they're not just.
In the Philippines is
they're not just killing drug dealers. I spoke to a Filipino that I met who's working with homeless people on the streets of Manila, who has told me that the majority of people being shot dead in this policy are simply homeless addicts.
They're getting rid of other people as well, and that's the collateral damage, unfortunately. But, well, no, I'm just saying to you, it's a different way. It's a different part of the world.
God, what is going through your head? No, I'm asking you about this part of the world.
Yeah. Okay, so you tell me how you're going to solve this issue, because they've tried to be nice, move people on, do X, Y, and Z, outreach people, counsellors, police, and it's rinse and repeat. So what does the person do who's trying to have a nice shop, business, etc.? He has to take direct action because nothing else is working.
Up to and including...
Hats off to them, Sheila.
Up to and including shooting people?
No, we're not doing that in England, are we, unfortunately? So, therefore, the drug addicts, the drug dealers need to be shot dead. That's full stop, because you're never going to solve
Yeah, but listen...
Or decriminalise.
All right, but Alex, let me speak. You can't just conflate homeless people sleeping on the streets with drug dealers that you want to shoot dead. You can't just have a policy whereby you think, listen, throw water over them, whoever they are, or worse still, shoot them, whoever they are. You know that's insane, Alex.
I'm not talking about shooting homeless people.
You just said, unfortunately, we don't.
No. We don't do that here. We don't do that.
I know, and you said, unfortunately, we don't do that here.
Okay, right. Well, that's a bit of figure of speech. But the truth of the matter is, legalise the drugs or decriminalise it, let the government and the health service let everyone go around being a zombie if they wish and pay for the privilege and don't get bad trips and die. Or you have to do what the Philippines do. There's none of this nonsense war on drugs. The mayor goes jumping in with the police in the morning, smashing down some drug crack doors. The media all lap up.
Oh, OK. Enough of Alex, I think. Thank you for your call, though, Alex in Pimlico. It's only polite to say thank you.
Chris is in Reading. Chris, what do you think?
Well, basically, I think a lot of it is also government and liberal media's fault, and I'll tell you for why. The Bradford girls and the Rochdale girls, basically, if the people that had attacked her had been dealt with correctly, this wouldn't have gone as far. The programme wouldn't have happened. And basically...
So you realise this is the equivalent to someone ringing me and saying if Britain wasn't bombing Iraq, we wouldn't have had July the 7th.
Well, let me put it a different way.
No, let's go with the way you've put it. You are essentially justifying terrorism.
Well, I'm not, because the guy is an angry nutter, and he got angry.
So were the July the 7th bombers. But a lot of people would have rung me back in the day and said, you need to look at the foreign policy, and you're saying you need to look at the grooming events, which were prosecuted. I'm not patronising you now, but I don't think you haven't read the report.
They allowed it to happen. It was allowed to happen for a long time. The programme went onto the media.
And so you're aware of the court case unfolding at the moment involving a football coach. You're aware of the child sex abuse inquiry that's looking at pretty much every private school in the country. You're aware of the swimming coaches. But why only care about this one?
Nawaz was retweeted that the Rochdale girls should keep their mouths shut. She is in the opposition. Do you not think that's going to annoy people?
It annoys me. If it's as you reported, it annoys me. But you're now justifying terrorism, Chris. Stop.
I'm not justifying it, mate. I'm not.
Yes, you are.
I'm not justifying. I'm not.
Well, why have you mentioned it, Chris?
Well, because I'm saying that some people will get very annoyed and act upon it, and most people won't.
Yes. So what are you saying about the some people? Why have you mentioned this stuff if you're not in some way suggesting that that's the real cause of terrorism?
Well, no, because you're suggesting that the right wing are causing it. They're just a reaction.
No, I'm reading out the court. I'm reading out the court report.
No, well, so that makes it absolutely right, does it?
Yes.
We don't have to question.
If we're discussing what happened in court, then reading out the court report is pretty reliable. Yes. So let's just examine why you don't recognise that you are now the, if you will, the right-wing equivalent of the Muslim caller telling me that you can't really look at the July the 7th attacks or September the 11th without looking at Western foreign policy in the Middle East. And I used to get very cross with them because it seems to me that there's never any justification for going out and murdering innocent people. You phone me up to tell me that there is a justification.
No, there's no justification for it.
Would you like to apologise on his behalf?
No.
Why not?
I didn't. Because I don't kill anybody.
Would you like to apologise as a fellow white person?
No.
Why not?
Because I didn't do anything.
But whenever there's an Islamist attack, I'm bombarded by people telling me that all Muslims need to apologise or they need to. What are you doing at the moment to root out far right ideology in your community, Chris?
Yeah, but
it's not a trick question. What do you do? Because you clearly know a lot about it, because you phone me up with all these details. What are you doing at the moment to combat far-right ideology that could radicalise people like this?
What are you doing?
Talking to you, mate. Talking to you.
Why didn't you go about Nawaz?
Because I'm not interested in a Labour MP's Twitter account. I'm interested in the actions of a murderer.
No, that's right. Of course you wouldn't go on about Nawaz, because it's not in your... Nawaz retweeted that the girls in Rotherham should keep their mouths shut.
But that's disgusting.
Donald Trump.
That's disgusting, Chris.
A programme on it.
A programme on a Labour MP's tweet when we're talking about someone who's been murdered.
About Donald Trump.
Okay, so I'll ask you again.
You talked all about Donald Trump, mate, didn't you?
I do talk a lot about Donald Trump. Yes, he's the leader of the free world. Nawaz Shah is a recently arrived Labour MP who has clearly, if you're telling me something correct, she's done something incredibly stupid. I agree with you. Now answer my question.
Why haven't you done a programme on it, mate?
Well, because no one's going to disagree, Chris.
No, because the Liberals don't want to, do they?
Now, Chris, here's the thing, right? OK, let's do it this way. Here is, if Chris has described this Twitter activity correctly, I think it's utterly disgusting. Ring me now if you don't. That's how it would work. Everybody thinks it's disgusting, Chris. You've got a victim mentality.
To be fair, no. The only person who mentioned it was Maajid, and fair play to him, because he's got the balls to talk about this stuff.
But we're talking about it now. I'm agreeing with everything you've said, Chris. What is wrong with your ears?
Well, no, because you're trying to twist it that I'm a terrorist.
No, I'm asking what you've done to tackle the far-right ideology that you have such an understanding of within your own community. What are you doing to battle this radicalisation process?
No, what are the government doing about it? What are the government
not enough.
Look, have you seen the Stacey Dooley in Luton?
Not enough, Chris. Mate, I can't go through your back catalogue of recorded programmes and Twitter analysis. I'm asking you what you have done.
Nonsense.
Please let me ask a question that you'll answer.
What have I done about right-wing radicalism?
Yes.
No, I'll tell you what, I didn't know about Tommy Robinson until the Manchester attack, and I'll tell you why.
What have you done? What have you done, though?
I haven't done anything.
Why not?
It's not for me to do, mate.
But you know so much about it. You're so clear on what causes it. Surely you could help fight this radicalisation process.
22 children and adults get blown up, and the mosque that guy went to actually said that Western society is immoral.
So you're justifying it again and you don't even realise.
I'm not justifying it, mate.
So why are you telling me about this stuff then?
So what I'm saying is the liberal media and the government haven't done
What
enough
is the
to
liberal
stand
media,
out.
Chris? When you say the liberal media? Yes, but I know me. But who else?
Well, Channel 4 News, the very day afterwards.
Channel 4 News.
Channel 4 News was saying the atmosphere's amazing. It's like a festival, like we don't have enough festivals in this country.
Chris, what are you talking about now? The day after what?
Channel 4 News, after the Manchester bomb, they were saying what an amazing atmosphere it was.
An atmosphere of recovery and peace. That they were interviewing people who were there and reflecting on what they were finding.
Not the parents, mate. The parents were quiet.
Well, I've had the parents in this studio. I've had Martin Hett's mum and dad sitting here describing to me how the one thing that... Pardon?
Not all of them. No one.
I can't have all of them in the studio. I can only invite the ones in that have asked to come in. Chris, I apologise that I can't issue an invitation to everybody. So apart from me and Channel 4 News, Chris, I'm not gonna have a row with you. I want to get inside your thinking. I don't want to fight with you or shout at you. What else is the liberal media? When you say the liberal media, I mean, on this programme, with regard to the grooming gangs that you mentioned in the north of England, we went in first and we went in hard on that story. And we have repeatedly shared, I say we, I'm sounding like the Queen, I have repeatedly shared my theory that it has a lot to do with entrenched misogynistic attitudes that are inculcated in cultures that are coming from specific parts of the Middle East. I can say that out loud a billion times. Is that liberal media?
It's also an underlying sort of awareness. I mean, I know, for instance...
Is that liberal media, Chris? When I say all that stuff about misogyny and inculcation and it having cultural and geographical roots, is that liberal media or is that stuff you like to hear?
No, basically, it's the fact that so much is just whitewashed.
It's not though, is it? But you've just used me as your best example of liberal media, and your best example of things being ignored is something I've talked about repeatedly in the most castigating of terms. So something's gone wrong between my mouth and your ear, and something went wrong between...
Well, I don't listen to every single programme you do.
Between Darren Old... No, you're too busy looking at Naz Shah's Twitter account and recording Channel 4 News. So we'll ask again, let me ask again, what are you doing to combat this far-right ideology that you have quite a good understanding of?
No, the far-right, people like Tommy Robinson, are a reaction to his upbringing and to what has happened in this country and the backlash to it. So the fault is the government not tackling it.
OK. Not tackling what, Chris?
Not tackling things like Sharia law being trying.
So again, you think that this act of terrorism is a result of something other than the terrorist. It's a result, just in the same way that people say the bombing in the Middle East was what caused September the 11th and July the 7th. You think that Darren Osborne becoming a terrorist was a result of things that Muslims do?
Sikhs that I know of that are not happy with the situation in this country, educated
and that is Darren Osborne, mate. And it's just a question of where that unhappiness takes you. It's 10:51. I'm 6 minutes late for the break, Chris. I hope you feel you've had a fair crack of the whip. And just on a very personal level, you can just say what you like about me, but you have to also at some point recognise reality. So the grooming gangs that you used as your example of where the liberal media are somehow letting the country down were covered on this programme pretty much from the moment Andrew Norfolk started reporting it in the Times, and the amount of complaints we got about concluding and stating that there were cultural and geographical roots to this behaviour. The line I always use, my friend, is how the hell I can just about get my head around one scumbag doing this, but how the hell could you turn to your colleagues or your mates and say, oh, do you want to join in? That speaks to me of a community problem. I can say it until I'm blue in the face, Chris, and people like you will never hear it. And that, I'm afraid, is a sign of being radicalised. Paul is in Worcester Park, not Worcester. Well, I didn't need to say that. I don't know why I did. Paul, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi, James.
Hello, mate.
I often hear you quite correctly say...
That's the thing about radios.
Yeah, I often hear you quite saying that, the colour of skin doesn't matter and is irrelevant, OK, which I agree.
To the value of a human being.
So where's the story? Well, where is the story that you've decided to, run?
Well, it's a question based upon the existence of people who think that the colour of skin does matter and asking essentially how on earth they can continue thinking that when they've been shown scientifically that it clearly doesn't. I apologise, I thought that was really obvious.
No, it's not. It's not. It may be obvious to you, but I'm not sure if it is obvious. I still don't see how you can justify where the story is.
Here's the thing: not everybody agrees with me that skin colour is irrelevant. You're aware of that, right?
But how does it change it? You mentioning this?
Because if we accept the existence of people that think your skin colour is an indicator of your value as a human being. You're familiar with things like racism and apartheid and discrimination. So those people who think that skin colour really does matter, when you present them with scientific evidence that it really, really doesn't, the question I would like people to answer is how does that affect your worldview? But people aren't really keen to ring me up and say, I'm a massive racist, and this is how it affects my worldview.
No, but often those people say those things because they think there is a difference. True? Between the races.
Well, they think there might be a difference of what's going on under the skin that is somehow indicated by the colour of the skin. But this story renders that.
Hang on. Well, when we say going under, that's a strange term. But these people say there's a difference. Now, these archaeologists, all they've dug up. Are you tired or something? Am I taxing you a bit here?
I don't know that I'm tired. I've answered your question.
All right, try and follow it.
I've answered your question, Paul.
Hang on, they've dug up skin and bone.
No, they haven't dug up any skin, Paul. It was 11,000 years old.
Okay, all right, well, that actually improves my argument. The older it is, still from what they've found, they're able to find that it's probably a black skin covering it rather than a white one, in which case there must be a difference. There is a difference, isn't there?
Between what, Paul?
Well, between a skeleton from which they can draw the conclusion that it was a black guy and a skeleton from which they can draw the conclusion it's a white guy.
There's a difference in the colour of their skin, but nothing else, Paul. That's what the DNA analysis establishes. And if you go back far, Paul, just in a sentence, because obviously I don't think we're going to part as bosom buddies, but in a sentence, tell me why you care about this story enough to ring me.
I actually do like racial harmony. I think it's people like you who bring up stories like this continually actually emphasise the difference rather than trying to harmonise it.
This story is all about being identical, and it's not me bringing it up, is it? It's a documentary on Channel 4 on February the 18th. It's on page 3 of the Times. It's on the national news bulletins, and we've been running it because I'm really interested, Paul, in people who think that skin colour is an indicator of something other than skin colour, and we all know that there are lots of them in the world, Paul. There are lots and lots of them in the world, and I wonder how they process this information.
James, somewhere in the world, Mickey Mouse is wearing a James O'Brien watch. You do realise that?
You know, it's not often I get owned so comprehensively as I just have been by you, Paul. I shall send you a badge in the post.
It is. It was. It may always be Brexit that leads this programme. So let's take our first call on that. Paul Gilbert is calling us from Taunton. Good afternoon, Paul.
Good afternoon.
So, look, yes, I mean, it's on a cycle, isn't it? And now we're talking about borders, hard borders, soft borders. What do you make of what Michel Barnier has said, which is, look, the truth is it's going to be a hard border. The truth is that's the hard truth and you've got to face it.
Right, it's been made very clear and agreed by both sides that we'll not have a hard border. Michel Barnier is deliberately attempting to make these negotiations more difficult to show the EU members that he's a tough negotiator. Well, Mr Barnier, it will not work. We have a long-standing arrangement with Ireland and we will retain an open border. It's in the interests of all EU members and the UK to have tariff-free agreements. To do so would be damaging to all EU countries. Britain is leaving the EU. There'll be no second referendum. The EU should accept those facts and make it easier for all. Britain will be successful in securing free trade agreements both inside and outside of the EU, and EU members know this. The scaremongering and the threats by Mr Barnier will only lead to a decline for the EU.
OK, well, let's...
Can I just say one thing?
No, I'm not getting rid of you. You've said a few things, and you can say the other thing as well, but I want to bring Sean O'Flynn in on this. He's calling us from Bantry in Ireland. Hello, Sean.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Sean, meet Paul. Paul, meet Sean. So Paul is saying, look, this is just a load of rabble-rousing, scaremongering, trying to frighten us into a position before the end of a negotiation. You're in Ireland. What does it feel like for you?
From my perspective, like, the comments I'd make now would be that of a concerned friend. And if I could take sort of an example that nearly everybody encounters in their personal lives, we all know somebody who's drinking too much.
Sean, can I? Sorry, I'm so sorry. It does sound as if you've been trapped in a bucket. Do you mind if I come back to you? We're going to call you back because I've got a feeling that it's going to be an interesting call. But yes, either you sound like a Dalek or somewhere, as I say, in metal. Paul, you wanted to say the one more thing. Say the one more thing, and we'll try and get Sean back up.
OK, well, Britain wishes to maintain a good relationship with the EU, and like Churchill, will not be browbeaten. Go and see the film Darkest Hour, Mr. Barnier, and you will see that the Brits are quite resolute.
OK, you mentioned Churchill.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know an awful lot about Churchill, but I do know that I think it was 1946. He made a very famous speech calling for a United States of Europe. Do you know that speech?
Yes, I realise that.
So,
but, what it showed in the film is that the government most of them were in favour of going to Hitler and coming to some agreement. And it was only when Churchill went out to the people and asked them that they stood up and said, no, we are resolute.
But just, I mean, you brought up Churchill, not me, but he also said, you know, having been experienced the cost of war, he said that it was very important to have a recreation of the European family.
Yes, but when that happened, we weren't going to go into a United States of Europe as such. We were still going to retain our sovereignty.
Yeah, but he called. I mean, those are the words that he used: creation of United States of Europe. As I say, I'm not. There may be Churchill experts out there who can tell me context about that, but the words he did use were United States of Europe. George Steele, so patient. George, thank you very much for waiting. Tell me what you've heard so far on the programme and from the politicians this week.
Well, what I've heard so far, I'm in general agreement with. But the point I wanted to make is Mr. Barnier seems to be making it up as he goes along. He doesn't understand his own rules. For example, the borders of the EC are either sea borders or land borders. Where there's a land border, like Hungary, as was mentioned by an earlier speaker, it's a hard border. Now, that hard border is erected by the member of the EC adjacent to that, not the countries outside that. Now, if we're leaving the EC, then the Northern Ireland border is nothing to do with us. It's the Republic of Ireland who would be erecting a hard border if they wanted to.
Right.
And it's them that should be leaned on by Barnier, not moaning at us, because it's nothing to do with us.
OK, George, OK.
We're outside.
OK, got it. Thank you very much indeed.
This is Nigel Farage standing in for Iain Dale, and we are talking about Alexander Coty and El Shafi El Sheikh, the two British-born ISIS fighters that have been captured and from whom the British government have removed their UK citizenship. And I'm pleased about that. And I think we should have stripped everybody that went there, including the 450 that are back on our streets. But it does lead to a slight debate as to where they should go next. And the Americans saying, well, kind of, isn't it your problem, really? Why should it be ours? So should they be tried in Syria? Should they come back to this country to face trial? Should they go to the International Criminal Court in The Hague, or should the Americans take them and put them in Guantanamo? And even though I accept there's a debate on this, I have not backed off an inch from saying I do not want them back in this country. Helen is a new caller from St Albans. Good evening, Helen.
Oh, hi, Nigel. I've got a really good idea. It's quite simple. Basically, if they would like to live by Sharia law, fine, let them die by Sharia law. So basically what we can do, this new Crown Prince of Saudi, he's fighting against ISIS at the moment. Well, guess what? They can go there and be beheaded on a Sunday in the square in the afternoon with everyone to watch, and he can even do pay-per-view because I will pay to watch that.
Come on, Helen, would you really pay to watch that?
Yes, I would. Absolutely, I would, yeah. Why would anyone even consider letting that vermin back in this country? It's ridiculous. And we all know if they come back here, there's a very good chance they'll be found not guilty.
Helen, I don't want them back in this country. I didn't want the other 450. I think Theresa May, as Home Secretary, was hopeless on this, and I don't think anything really has changed until now. And suddenly things have changed. Their citizenship has been revoked, and about time too. So I feel with you on that. But Helen, I wouldn't pay-per-view to see people being executed. I mean, surely isn't that reducing ourselves? Isn't that, Helen, reducing ourselves to their level a bit?
No, I think it's anger, and I think everyone has really had enough of this now. This country has gone so politically far left in every way. We know damn well if they come back to this country, some of the top barristers in the land will represent them. And guess what? Have we got any witnesses? Have we got any statements? We'll probably walk away, and then we'll feed them. We'll give them.
I think in these cases, Helen, I think they're damned actually by their own social media output. But look, Helen, I want to put this to you one last time. It's people like ISIS that conduct public executions and put this stuff out on the internet. If we were to send them to a place where they were publicly beheaded and that was put on the internet, we have lowered ourselves to their level.
Nick, Nigel, I think everyone is angry. Everyone is enough of this country, and now's the time to actually do something about it.
Okay, I'm losing my line. I'm going to have to lose Helen because of that. Well, Helen feels very strongly about that, so strongly she would pay-per-view to see these people executed. Well, it's not my point of view, but I would guess she's probably not on her own in thinking that.
Stephen from Bradford, tell us what you think.
Well, I agree with you, I think, although you're trying to be non-committal on a personal note. What's it got to do with Catholic bishops anyway?
Yeah.
Or any other kind of religious leaders?
Well, no, I'm not, no, non-committal. I am entirely, by the way, Stephen. Stephen, I'm 100%. I'm 100% on the side of women's right to choose.
Belief and power on
Stephen, stop a minute. Stephen, can you hear me?
And choosing the bits that suit them best. It's none of their damn business.
Are we listening to a pre-recorded message? Stephen?
Yeah.
What do you think I'm being non-committal on?
I think you're being non-committal as to whether we ought to be listening to, whether we ought to A, be listening to, and B, allowing these so-called religious leaders, Catholic bishops and the like, to have any say whatsoever. It's none of their business.
Well, no, they certainly have a right to speak.
Dealing with little boys' private parts and
Stephen, we live in a democracy. They have a right to speak. I don't think we have to listen to them. All right, Stephen. Look, they have a right to speak. We don't have to listen to them. There's no non-committal there. It's actually it's a commitment to the same thing, which is a woman has the right to choose, and a Catholic bishop has the right to, or a priest has the right to oppose it. But you know, we don't have to listen to them, and that's what we're talking of. John from Norwood, tell us what you think.
Oh, hi, Maajid. Thanks for letting me onto your show.
That's right.
I think there's a little bit of a contradiction in what you say, to the extent that if women have the right to choose, which you heavily support, then what about people's right to, I mean, and this is a positive actual choice, isn't it? What about people's right to positively, actively choose what happens to their body parts? Why are the two different? They're both parts of the body. They're both inert. Why shouldn't choice affect both?
I'll tell you why, John. It's quite simple, though, of course, you do have a right to choose to be stingy and keep your own body organs.
Stingy is a bit of a rough word.
Well,
People might have a lot of reasons for it.
Well, what reasons, John?
Well, I don't know.
So let me tell you something. In North Korea, where human beings are being harvested for organs in an incredibly brutal and cruel regime, the misery that is caused...
Solidarity with the third world.
Eh? What?
You've got to give your organs to the state in solidarity for the third world.
No, John, hold on. I'm talking of human suffering, and the fact that you've just immediately decided to belittle that as some form of campaign against foreigners, I'm astounded. You know, the fact is, human beings are harvested for their organs on a black market because there's a demand in the West for organs. And for you to turn that into, oh, it's about the third world, I don't really want to talk about it because I don't care, is frankly incredibly cruel. Because it's we in the West who can afford to pay for those organs that are being harvested on a black market in developing countries. Therefore, we bear a level of responsibility on the suffering that is inflicted upon unsuspecting innocent kidnap victims whose organs are harvested because of the demand in the West to buy those organs. For you to dismiss that is incredibly callous, John.
You can enjoy, you can abandon someone's choice about what happens to their organs, but apply it when it suits you politically.
No, John, you're not understanding the point. You can opt out of. Hold on, you can opt out. You can opt out of this presumption that your organs will be donated, so you still have the choice ultimately, but ultimately why your presumption should be that you are opting in unless you specify it is because, unlike in an abortion, no one else suffers as a result of this. Whereas with the organ situation, human beings are suffering. Whether it's the poor chap that needs the organ transplant, or indeed it's the person that's been kidnapped on the black market to have their organ harvested. Real human suffering's involved. That's the fundamental difference between abortion and the organ debate. No other third party suffers when a woman chooses to have an abortion, John.
Except the baby.
Well, that's if you believe it is a baby.
Well, listen, if people believe that a killing is about to happen and they feel morally bound to object to it, who are you to say they mustn't?
Well, I'm not saying they mustn't.
Yes, you are.
No, you said.
want to limit.
No, I'm not, John. No, I'm not. I'm saying, of course, they can speak out against it, just not right in front of the door the door of the clinic where the woman's trying to pass.
Why shouldn't they bring the attention of the act about to be taken in their mind to the person who's about to take it?
Well, I'm sure, John, John, if you go down the road and protest, you can have every right to speak about it, but like outside of Parliament, should it be legal to protest outside the House of Commons?
Well, protesting outside the House of Commons is that's a canard, that's an Aunt Sally. You can't protest in a lot of places. You can't protest outside Aldermaston. You can't protest... and it depends what you say anyway. There's a lot of places you can't protest.
So there we are. So it's not so black and white, is it, John?
Well, the House of Commons has got nothing to do with it.
No, it has. It's not allowed to protest outside the House of Commons, and I'm saying that...
So what?
Right, so John...
They don't kill babies in the House of Commons.
They don't kill babies in the House of Commons.
No, they don't.
Some would disagree with you there, John, when they make decisions to go to war, but that's another debate altogether. I mean, can you not see, therefore, the entire subjectivity of this debate? Because you believe it's about killing babies. Others believe that when the millions of children died in Iraq due to depleted uranium, and Madeleine Albright was asked as to whether the price was worth it on CBS 60 Minutes by Leslie Stahl, and she said yes. Others would believe that's killing babies. 1 million children in Iraq. And so, you know what? Based upon my subjective definition of what killing a baby is, I'm going to now start breaking the law and protesting outside the House of Commons where it's not allowed to protest because it's an obstruction. The fact is that when a vulnerable woman is going to an abortion clinic, the last thing she wants to see at the door of the clinic is people shouting at her baby killer, because you clearly believe it's killing, isn't it?
No,
Don't you, John?
I don't believe that. I never said that. You're putting words in my mouth.
What do you believe? Do you believe abortion...
Well, I believe in the rights of individuals to express their opinions.
No, John, do you believe aborting a fetus is killing a baby?
I believe those who believe it is have a right to voice their opinion.
And John, what do you believe? I'll ask you a third time. Do you believe aborting a fetus is killing a baby?
I do not have... I am a secular person, right? But I have great increasing understanding of the Catholic doctrine.
Do you believe aborting a fetus is killing a baby?
The slaughtering of the next generation of the proletariat is a crime.
What?
Yes.
What?
How many people have been murdered for abortion since the 60s?
So, John, do you just answer the blooming question, mate? Do you believe an abortion is killing a baby?
Well, I believe that not having babies and getting rid of them and then bringing in cheap labour is a good answer, isn't it?
So you're anti-immigration and you believe abortion is killing babies. Can we get a straight answer out of you for once?
Birth to a proletariat and you can bring it into the country on the cheap. Great.
John, why are you embarrassed of your own opinion? You've called on to a national radio show to debate me on the subject of abortion. Why are you hiding what your opinion is? Why are you embarrassed? Be proud of your view. What do you think abortion is? Is it killing babies?
Well, I'm just saying...
Well, there's not much you're saying. I've asked you the blooming question about 5 times. You're clearly passionate about it. You're clearly upset. You believe there's some form of conspiracy to kill the proletariat and bring in immigrants. Why, for the life of me, can't you just simply tell me what you think? What do you believe, John? Do you believe abortion is killing babies?
I mean, I've told you quite a lot about what I think, but I'm in favour, above all, of the right of self-expression.
Is abortion killing babies, John? Can you answer that?
Well, well, what do you think it is?
No, I'm asking you what you think it is, John.
It's the termination of
John,
life.
I don't think it is.
Oh, yes, it is killing.
Oh,
yes.
Finally, we got an answer. Wow.
Well, it's the termination of life.
No, right. Why did it take you so... Oh, my God. It's not, I wasn't trying to trap you. It's a simple question that I was trying to ask you, and you're just embarrassed. You're clearly embarrassed, and you know why it took you so long, and now we've gone over time again? Because you're embarrassed of your own position. That's the only reason that somebody would hide and conceal their own answer like that for so long, and it's like trying to it's like trying to squeeze water out of a stone or blood out of a rock. It's because you're embarrassed of your own position, because you know it sounds absurd. And that's why it took you so long to answer it. Thank you, finally, for answering the question. John?
Tristram has called from Haringey. Hello, Tristram.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Who's your extreme?
Well, I was actually going to make a point, but it sounds like I'm probably going to agree with a lot of what your previous caller was just saying. JJ, you've only got to look at history to look at some real extremists on political views. And on the right, you know, you've got the antithesis of that, which is say Hitler. And then in recent times, you've got people like Pinochet, although without the murder. And on the left, you have those, you know, the poster boy child of people like John McDonnell, Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot. Those are true extremists. And I would say on the right of our political spectrum at the moment, nobody gets even remotely close to Hitler. Whereas there are elements of the Labour Party at the moment who not only are getting very close to those left extremes, but positively espouse many of us. Well,
I mean, in a sense, apart from the Pol Pots and the Stalins, that, you know, that list you gave, you know, nobody comes close to any of those, do they? I mean, to compare any modern day British politician with anything like that is bonkers.
This is the thing. Not so much in what they actually executed as quite literally, but also figuratively, but in terms of their political policies.
Okay, Tristram, I'm going to leave it there if I may. Let's hear from Caelan, first of all, though, in Hitchin, who wants to carry on our conversation about Haiti and our widespread disapproval of Oxfam in Haiti, and yet perhaps less so here in the UK. Are we guilty of a bit of a double standard here, Caelan?
Yes, I think there's a lot of hypocrisy, both on the side of the charity who fired those people instantly, trying to show themselves whiter than white, on the side of the government, and many of the British donors, whether public or individuals. At the end of the day, the right to sex is a human right. It's the most important, most essential human right. Otherwise, we wouldn't exist. Now, those people go out in the field to help other people. It's not a comfortable thing. Those people who donate £10 or £15 and think, okay, that's done. Maybe they should go out and find out what it's like. And then see the pressure, the stress that people have to live under. And in case people don't know, sex is great for stress relief and for improving one's life.
Oh,
now,
my goodness.
The fact is...
Caelan, are you saying, okay, you clearly think...
Can I just finish the point, please? And then you can... would that be okay?
Of course.
Okay. Now, if they were
just a bit
to try
shocked,
to approach...
but go on.
Yes, okay. If they were to approach a colleague for sex, they'd be accused of harassment and all sorts of things, because now man cannot approach a colleague because, hey, it's harassment and it's unwanted approach and interest. So the fact that they use prostitutes which existed, they did not create the prostitution. That prostitution exists, and there are so many women who are very poor and have to do that because the local government corruption and because of all this stock market speculation, putting lots of money into the pockets of too rich, that means so many people are very, very poor.
But so Caelan, one of Oxfam's, now I'm going to come in now, one of Oxfam's central reasons for being there in the first place was to break up that damaging, exploitative status quo by helping the people, and as I said earlier, restoring their dignity. To then engage in that status quo of exploitation and harm is the opposite of what Oxfam and other aid agencies are meant to be doing there. As for the right to sex, approaching a colleague for sex is the language you use. Now, if somebody says to you as a colleague, sex is a right, I need some sex, can I have some sex? That's harassment, Caelan. However you like to dress it up, that's harassment. However, forming a relationship with somebody who you work with and having sex with them, is not harassment. They're different things. Paying someone for sex, hang on, but you had your say, paying someone for sex when your job explicitly is to help restore their dignity is not on.
Well, I don't know if they have anything in their contract about not paying anybody for sex. I mean, even in the UK, prostitution is legal. So I don't know what their job says. But I think if we want to address things on dignity, our government needs to work with those governments, stop the corruption, make sure that those women and those people have a better standard of living and a better chance of putting food on their children's table.
I agree, and wouldn't it be awful nice if the aid agency supported them in that? Thank you, who take a lot of their money. Thank you, Cailin in Hitchin. Goodness me, there's been some quite shocking views. Shocking views to me anyway, this hour.
I mean, if I'd been in charge of negotiations, here's what I'd have done. On the very first day, I'd have walked in and said, right, we're not going to impose any tariffs on goods. We want all political ties cut. We'll stay involved with, European arrest warrants as and when it seems fit. But otherwise, we want tariff-free access, and you can have tariff-free access to us. Thanks very much, and we'll be leaving now. And then they go, oh, hold on a minute. The U27, Barnier, sorry, wait, have to start negotiating. And at which point we say, oh, no, we're not negotiating. We won't impose any tariffs. We're going to go outside and make that statement public. You decide among yourselves what you want to do and come back and let us know. And we will respond accordingly. No more information than that. And then you've got 27 EU nations who are no longer sitting there all agreeing with each other. Then you've got the Germans and the French and the Italians and the Poles and the Romanians go, well, hold on a minute, we've all got different things. We don't want tariffs on those. We don't want tariffs. We export to Britain. We don't want tariffs on that. We want this and that. We should have told them this is how it's going to be. Now, they don't have to agree. But at least when they do choose to impose punishment tariffs on us, their countrymen, their people will know that is a political decision by those countries. Now, we reap the benefits of tariffs that we can charge back. We just impose exactly the same tariff. But it's entirely their choice. If they want to do that, same with, the border of Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. If you want to put a hard border in, that's your choice. You can do it. But we're not putting one in. It's up to you. We should have just been so much more forceful. And I tell you what, paying 100 billion, 40 billion, 20 billion. Fuck off, frankly. Fuck off. Not a chance. Not a single penny.
Excuse me. Yes, Donald Trump's words are in fact sticking in my craw. He is still talking. We'll keep an eye and an ear across what he's saying. So far, it's not worth much, to be honest, but we will keep a listening ear across. We've been talking about whether Tracy Emin, the artist, is right when she says young men have a better handle on equality with women and respect for women than older men do. Is she right? Martin has called from Croydon. Hello, Martin.
Hello.
You are a self-declared misogynist. Tell me why.
Well, it's so hard. It's so hard to say whether I am or not. I've written some notes here so I wanted to make best use of the time available.
Please do.
Am I a misogynist or not? Some people think I am, but I mean, some of my best friends are women, and I get on very well with women. But I think sort of, in a way, perhaps if you understand women better, you get on better with them. It doesn't mean you like them, because it's a bit like this Christian thing of hating the sinner, not the sinner.
Tell me your sins anyway, Martin. Come on.
In my eyes, women are sinners. It's their group behaviours which are sort of getting worse and worse over the years.
What do we do? Well, what are we doing that's so sinful?
Well, I mean, in a nutshell, and this to sort of take ages to elaborate on, is lies and deception. Women believe themselves to be in an inferior position, a situation, and I suppose this has come about historically because of physical body strength and all this kind of thing, and so they tend to try and get their needs met, tangentially rather than directly, and this is slightly like the source of it.
Which needs?
Well, all needs. I mean, I sort of say, in a typical household. I mean, I think in talking about this, we should concentrate on domestic situations more than most.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of an abusive relationship that I'm trying to end. I went on holiday and came back and found my flat has had all its windows broken by this crazy woman, and the council are now saying if I let her into my home, they'll evict me. So and this innocence game. I mean, even you. I mean, when you sort of then, even a few minutes ago before the news, etc., you said, oh yes, you generalised about men, and then apologised for generalising about men or something, and then said, and women too. And there was
no, I didn't generalise about men. Can I answer your accusation? Can I answer your accusation, or are you literally not going to let me speak?
No, I'll let you speak.
I did not generalise about men. I did the opposite. I placed a question that said, are young men X? Are young women X? Are young men compared to old men X, Y, or Z? And then I made the point that, of course, all men and all women aren't the same. That's central to my point. I think there are types of men and I think there are types of women.
Yeah, well... It was the point I wanted to make is about your tone of voice. When you corrected yourself, there was something about tone of voice, your tone of voice, which is, but of course women are guilty too. I mean, can you not see the attitude in that tone of voice? Oh my God, shock horror! I forgot that women can be bad creatures too. Oh, shock horror! I forgot that women can be bad. Oh, shock horror! I forgot that women can be bad. And this forgetting that women can be bad is endemic in society.
Well, listen, thank you for pointing out my tone of voice. I'll work on it, and thank you for pointing out the things I've missed. I'll work on that too. But can I just make an observation that you don't sound like a happy man, Martin. You're having bricks thrown through your window by the women that you know. You're being told by the council not to let them back in. Why would you let them back in? And you seem to be scornful of women. Why is that? What happened?
Well, yes, I think more enlightened women, do sort of say, Martin, sorry, that you've had these experiences. Either you've been unlucky or you're making bad choices when it comes to partners. Now, this is the more mature response that you get from a minority of women. But I'm talking about Facebook. On Facebook, I've got 4,000 female friends. And the majority of them are not that enlightened, But I mean, the enlightened ones do say, sorry, you must have had some bad experiences with women, and either that or you're choosing.
And do you think that the bad experiences you've had with women have led you to regard all women as things to be feared?
Yes. And when you've had,
well, you're generalising now about women, aren't you?
Well, yes, but I'm not saying that I didn't say that generalisation was a bad thing in the first place. Generalisation is part of logic. It's part of logic. It's part of reason. It's and by reason.
Yeah, but you accused me of it before, and I'm just pointing out that you've just done it yourself.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's context dependent. I'm not saying that generalisation is universally good or universally bad. In fact, look, you see, it was going on between men and women. It's going on between you and me right now. Women constantly try and invalidate men's positions. Men work very hard. They see there's serious problems between men and women that need to be cleared up. We do our best to clear those situations up. And every time we open our mouth, women put every single brain cell available onto how to invalidate the man's point of view position.
But I'm not, Martin. I'm honestly not. I'm genuinely interested about why you feel the way you do about women. And let me remind you what I've done in the last 3 minutes of our conversation. I've invited you to call. You've called. I've asked you what your relationship with women is like, what your feeling for women is like. I've asked you why that is. I've asked you what's happened to you. Nothing I have done is invalidating your position. I'm inviting you to explain your position.
Well, I feel that what I'm doing is not working for you. And it's this two-way thing.
Oh, it is working for me. My job right now is just to get interesting calls on the radio. This is working for me, trust me.
Oh, good. Well, there's this two-way thing that women. Well, this is where I don't want to generalise because I think. I think it's the louder women that are being listened to. It's the louder women that are the misguided, and the quieter women feel. Well, less empowered to speak up against the louder women than men feel empowered to speak up against the louder women.
Who are the louder women?
Oh gosh.
What do you mean when you say that?
I don't make a point of making a note of their names.
But what constitutes a loud woman? A woman who gives her view? A woman who doesn't always agree with you?
Oh, dear. I feel you're picking holes.
I'm asking questions. That's all I'm doing, Martin.
This is something I'm complaining about, is picking holes. Please try not to pick holes. Can we go in? See, I think for what for man is a constructive direction is not necessarily a constructive direction for women, and vice versa. The biggest lie of feminism is that men and women are the same. You know, we are so different you wouldn't believe it.
I would believe it, and I don't think men and women are the same.
Well, I'm glad in that case we're like.
But I don't think certain women and other certain women are the same either. Not everything boils down to gender.
Well, that's what I call dilution. That's what I call fudging.
That's what I call fact. But anyway.
Oh God, you see.
You see what?
You know, even we're having problems, aren't we?
No, I'm fine.
Oh God, well, I'm not. And you know, and if you don't work out why men are unhappy, then you will never, ever, ever solve.
I'm asking you to tell me why. And when I ask you a question, you say I'm picking holes. I'm opening the door. I'm opening the door for you, Martin.
How long have we got? Because if we've got the rest of the time available, are you a good?
Well, to be honest, you've called for therapy.
Well, no, you've offered therapy. I mean, I'm trying to steer the conversation onto what I think is fertile grounds, and I feel blocked by you.
Oh,
so
you're not blocked. I'm asking questions, Martin. How can that be blocking you? Oh dear.
Is something a fact because you have a vagina and you think it's fact?
No.
Right. Okay. Let's get that one sorted.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty clear right from the start of the day, but if it needs reiterating, I'm happy to reiterate it.
Me putting it so bluntly, do you still not get the point?
No.
I think women are arrogant.
Oh, dear.
Okay, let's give you a few more. Well, look, I saw a TV show the other day, and there's a load of women on the stage and a load of men in the audience, or something like that. And the women wanted to know why men thought they were crazy. You know, why do so many men think so many women are so really crazy?
Well, where was this event? What was it? Was it a television programme, was it?
Oh, I think it was on YouTube, you know.
Oh, okay, so not quite a television programme, yeah.
YouTube's great for this sort of thing.
Oh, I can imagine.
Well, I don't understand your tone of voice.
Well, when I say I can imagine, because it's a free-for-all, isn't it? So I can imagine it's great for this kind of thing. Well, it is a free-for-all, isn't it, YouTube? I think you'd agree.
Well, I believe that every communication vehicle has its ups and downs.
I agree.
Even your communication vehicle has its downsides, because I mean, if you've got a particularly bad blind spot, and as a result of that, you know, people like me, when we get anywhere near that blind spot, you know, can't get a word in edgeways, then your particular communication vehicle falls apart as well, doesn't it? I mean, I believe in communicating in many different ways.
No, I do. I'm not knocking YouTube. I'm just saying the reality is, compared to television, which is regulated, compared to radio, which is regulated, it's a free-for-all.
And I think there's a place for free-for-all.
So do I.
Oh, good. I mean, do you use YouTube much?
Not much, no.
No. But it's very good for this war of the sexes problem. It's very, very useful for the war of the perspective, because people are... minority views are surfacing and being analysed in great detail by very clever people. People are damn sight cleverer than me.
And can I ask you, Martin, do you ever, with the war of the sexes in mind, to use your words, do you ever find yourself in the company of a woman and kind of forget that she's a woman, and you're just in the company of somebody you like, you're chatting to her, she's chatting to you, you appreciate the same book or the same film, and you're not really focused on...
Yes.
Well, that's a good sign, isn't it? That suggests that the war of the sexes doesn't run too deep.
Are you setting yourself up as some kind of arbiter as to, healthy male behaviour and unhealthy male behaviour, and healthy female behaviour and unhealthy female behaviour? And and I wouldn't mind if that was the case, if the eye of scrutiny was equally or more so on women. What's wrong with the world as it stands? What's wrong with the world of the war of the sexes as it stands is the eye of scrutiny is more on men than women. Now I can assure you that as a man, I scrutinise everything I say before I say it, whilst I'm saying it, and after I'm saying it. The vast majority of women, if you ask them to repeat verbatim what they've just said, they cannot do it. There is no such thing as self-scrutiny. I mean, that's perhaps a bit of an extreme example, but I
think it's not true either, with respect. I mean, I literally just did it. I literally just did the thing that you say women don't do, which is to reiterate what I have said to you in the last few minutes. So I've literally just done what you say women cannot do.
Okay, well, I would put you right. You know, if I thought you'd made a mistake in that area, I would put you right. Can
I answer your question as to whether I think I'm an arbiter of correct male and female behaviour? I'm not, of course, an arbiter of that, but I think I'm somebody with valuable views to contribute to that conversation, as are you. We all are, otherwise we'll never get it right, will we?
But, you know, just to pick up on another thing, you see, I used the word healthy and you used the word correct, you see, and made me think I'm hair-splitting, but I don't think I am hair-splitting. I mean, another thing, perhaps I'll just spew out a lot of things until you hang up on me.
I'm not going to hang up on you. I tell you what, I finish at 4, and I would happily speak to you until 4, Martin, but I can't because there are rules around these things, and we have to go to the ad break now, which is such a shame. I'll read some of the texts out that people have been sending, and they've been very much enjoying your conversation with me, as have I. Thank you, Martin, for your call. Martin in Croydon.
There's no border between Islington or Camden and Westminster. There's no border between Camden and Westminster, but when I was Mayor of London, we anaesthetically and invisibly took hundreds of millions of pounds from the accounts of people travelling between those two boroughs without any need for border checks, whatever. There are all sorts of things.
Come on, you can't compare two boroughs of London with the kinds of difference in the arrangements that would be in place after Brexit between the UK and the EU.
It's a very relevant comparison.
Jazz has called from Tunbridge in Kent to carry on our conversation about extremism in this country. You want to talk about the anti-fascists, Jazz?
But just before I do, let me just lay down who I am.
Okay.
I'm a black man. I voted Brexit. I really like Trump. I follow a lot of right-wing media. I like Ann Coulter, so just to point in that kind of direction.
What do you like about her and Trump?
Well, I like the truths that the right wing talk about. You know, a lot of truth. The right wing spread, I think.
Give me an example of the truth that's chimed with you.
Let me give you an example. A truth from Tommy Robinson, say, about Sharia law courts in this country and how many they are and what they get up to. Don't you think that's the truth? Is there Sharia courts in this country?
Well, there are, yeah.
Thank you. So I never knew that, but that's the truth I found out.
Well, it's been not a new thing, and it's long known.
Do you think we should have a two-tiered law system in this country? I certainly don't. I think we should just have one law in this country, not a secondary Muslim law.
Well, it isn't a two-tier. I mean, there are Jewish equivalents. Catholic nuptial masses would fall under the same kind of tolerance as well of religion. So I understand. I think we're right to keep our eye on these things so there aren't abuses or limitations placed on people, perhaps especially women. But, Sharia courts aren't inherently what you might leap to presume they are.
But why are they here? Anyway,
because we're religiously tolerant in this country. That's why. But and not just to Muslims. But there you go.
You're right. We should keep an eye on them all.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the difference between right-wing extremists and Muslim fundamentalists is that Muslim fundamentalists get supported a hell of a lot through governments and extremism. Take ISIS, for example. A lot of governments have supported ISIS. That's not just a conspiracy theory anymore. It's a supported theory.
Your point is they're better resourced, is it?
I don't know what you're trying to, or what's trying to be created here, because like I said, I'm a black guy. I don't know what position that I should be taking here, because I agree with them. A lot of things they're talking about is the truth. A lot of what Muslim extremists do is terrible. Killing people, blowing people up, killing people on our very land.
But isn't killing people terrible? Full stop. You know, if you look at what happened to Joe Cox, if you look at what happened to Makrama Ali, you know, these are hate-filled political murders, really, on our streets, aren't they? In the way that the Islamist terror attacks are.
Yeah, I think you need to actually have a proper look at this, a lot of these cases here. But let me just say about Antifa.
Quickly, if you would, because we need to go to the break.
Yeah, Antifa came onto the scene. Let's just point at Berkeley, for example. The amount of violence perpetrated there by people who couldn't even argue properly, with people who can utter a sentence. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I don't know what's trying to be created here, but there is no right-wing extremism going on here.
There is right-wing extremism going on here. I mean, you know, it's been widely reported. Court cases involving it have been widely reported. But there is Antifa as well. You know, we keep an eye on them too, and there are stories around them. And you're right to say that their methods are sometimes violent. But I don't think that yet, within the bounds of the UK, we can talk about Antifa in exactly the same way that we can talk about neo-Nazis, can we? I can't. I don't equate the two. Donald Trump did. I don't. You seem to want to as well, but I reject that equivalence. As things stand, that may change. Antifa may morph into something else, but as things stand, I reject that equivalence. Thank you for your call, though, Jazz. Jazz in Tunbury. Ricky in Glasgow, you want to talk about safeguarding children in homes where an extremist view is held?
No. What I'm saying is I have extremist views by modern society. I'm very pro-life. I'm heavily opposed to abortion.
That's not extremist. It's completely legal.
Excuse me, my phone call. My sons and I will not accept conscription. We would not oppose Islam having its own Sharia law. It's their right to choose. So I'm an extremist. Would you take my children off of me?
I wouldn't take your children off you for that,
Thank you.
Ricky. No. Right, Ricky's gone. Gosh, what a charmer.
I suppose there is a third way, the proverbial third way. I'm asking how anybody can see Boris Johnson contradicting himself completely on the issue of the Irish border and retain anything other than utter derision for him. And John, unintentionally perhaps, suggested the one thought that hadn't occurred to me. You somehow will be able to believe him both times. You believe him when he said it would be economic and political madness. You believe him when he said it would be unthinkable to put a hard border in Ireland. And you also believe him when he said it's all going to be fine. That's your kind of cognitive dissonance writ large. Cameron is in Edinburgh. He writes, before last night, James, I wouldn't have had an answer to your question. However, after watching the latest Derren Brown programme on Netflix, I like a bit of popular culture diversity. Having watched the latest Derren Brown programme on Netflix that tests the power of social compliance by seeing if he can get an ordinary person to commit murder, I think I can understand. What it made me realise is that people in authority, positions of authority, still, despite the best efforts of people like you, command huge power when it comes to social compliance. This is, I think, doff cap, tug forelock, vote Rees-Mogg territory, isn't it? As a species, we're always more likely to go with the grain than against it, and even more so when an authority figure is the delivery mechanism. Even more so in the hands of a charismatic, which is obviously not always a good thing, person like Johnson. If Derren Brown can get someone to commit murder, Johnson can get people to comply with a hard border on Ireland. It's no big deal. And that's it, isn't it? I presume you have to either believe him when he said it would be a disaster or believe him when he said it would be fine. But actually, the Brexit mindset is perfectly capable of somehow believing both, as long as you don't think too deeply about it. Paul is in Bow. Paul, what would you like to say?
Well, I just think, in your usual irrational way, that you're overstating the case and being totally unrealistic.
Which bit, Paul?
Well, the case, if you're having negotiations...
let's... I prefer to talk...
Would you let me say what I was going to say?
When you tell me what I've been irrational about, yes.
Well, I'm just about to, if you'd let me get on with it.
Well, go on then.
Thank you. When you have negotiations, the positions can't start off fixed and then remain fixed all the way throughout, otherwise you'll never have negotiations.
How's Barnier moved?
That's right. No, I'm not. Would you just let me finish?
No, how's Barnier moved?
I would want to... Let me state my statement.
How has Barnier moved?
would you let me state my statement?
Well, you've already said something that's not true.
No. You've got to allow me to develop my argument.
You carry on then, Paul. You develop away, my friend.
Are you going to allow me to finish?
Yes, Paul. Carry on.
Thank you. That otherwise, so what happens is this: the UK position is that they want to preserve the free border with Ireland. That's it. If the EU are prepared to accept something like that, in other words, to modify their rules to suit the conditions of their own member state, Ireland, that might happen. If the EU show no intention of doing that, then you have to move to Plan B. And for Johnson to state what is the objective, and that is an objective which is also a public objective, and then deal with the alternatives if the EU aren't going to play ball, is just rational thinking. And I don't see how anybody can expect anybody else to do otherwise.
Well, let's begin with your first statement.
Views must change.
Yes, so let's begin with your first statement, that it's a negotiation and that means everybody moves. How has Michel Barnier's position on the Irish border changed since he first laid it out 18 months ago?
I don't think it has changed. But
you just said it has to.
Irrationality on the EU part.
No, irrationality is a description of facts.
No, what I'm saying is that they've entered...
No, I know what you're saying, Paul. I gave you lots of time to say it, and now we're examining it. So your first statement was that I had been irrational. I'm going to park my ego and not insist that you explain how.
Now, that's going to be a big job for you.
Absolutely it is. So let's look instead at what you said about negotiations. Michel Barnier's position last week and last year was that if we leave the customs union and the single market, there is no earthly way we can avoid having a hard border or moving the border to the sea. You said that positions changed during negotiations. I would just give you one opportunity now to explain how his position has changed, ever.
Okay. Well, I must agree with you formally there. His position hasn't changed, which shows that they aren't proper negotiations.
No, it doesn't. It shows that his position is contractually binding. It's the nature of the Good Friday Agreement that says it cannot move.
No. Well, okay.
Well, yes, Paul, this isn't a matter of opinion. This is a matter, and I've allowed you to be rude to me, and I've allowed you to insist on talking even though you've got nothing to say, and I've allowed you to be personal. So here is the question now, okay? How do you have identical economic conditions on both sides of the Irish border?
Are you asking me?
No, Paul, I'm asking Andy Pandy.
Okay, sorry, I thought you might have dropped me in from the conversation. No, the point I'm making is
I've heard your point. The question is this: how do you have identical economic conditions on both sides of the Irish border? How do you make that happen, Paul?
Well, you have some sort of compromise whereby, as the sort
you can't compromise the Good Friday Agreement, Paul.
You have compromised an electronic border. It is not beyond the wit of man for the EU and the UK to agree something which suits the special conditions of Ireland.
So you've just reached for that magic wand now that says electronic border, Paul. You don't know what you're talking about.
There is a solution to it.
Go on.
And if you're saying there isn't a solution,
tell me what the solution is.
Then are you suggesting we should not leave the EU because of the Irish border?
You tell me what the solution is, Paul.
Are you suggesting that we cannot leave the EU because of the existence of the Irish border?
I am telling you that we cannot sustain the Good Friday Agreement and Brexit in its current form without either building a border in Ireland or moving... Oh, Paul, my friend, I'm sorry.
Well, it's just going to...
You carry on talking.
You can't expect 60 million people to have their future governed by a particular agreement.
So you rang in to tell me that I was being irrational about the Irish border, and you conclude the conversation by saying, actually, you're absolutely right. It's an utterly insuperable obstacle, but it shouldn't stop us from leaving the European Union.
Because it involves some renegotiation of the Good Friday Agreement.
Yes. Have you read the Good Friday Agreement? Have you read the bit about renegotiations in the Good Friday Agreement? The bit where it says it's a holding tactic?
Let's get this straight. What you're saying to the UK public is that we cannot leave the European Union because of the existence of the Good Friday Agreement.
No, we cannot have a hard Brexit that involves leaving the customs union and the single market because of the Good Friday Agreement. There's a thing that... Let me tell you some truths. Let me tell you something simple.
James, come on, let's just follow this through.
No, Paul...
James, let's follow this through. Let's follow this through.
Right, you carry on, mate.
No, let's follow this through. You're now saying is that the EU refused to change their rules or to modify their rules to suit the special case of Ireland. And on that basis, that means that the Good Friday Agreement can't be changed. And that means because the Good Friday Agreement can't be changed, the UK cannot leave the European Union ever.
Paul, here's a wonderful thing.
Well, answer that question,
you haven't asked the question. If you did, I just said no. You said, is that what you're saying? I said no. Does that work in your head as an answer? Does that work in your head as an answer?
Well,
right, good. So now, no, Paul, I'm going to insist on speaking now, because here's what you've done, OK? You phoned in to say that Boris Johnson is somehow embarked upon a very sophisticated and clever negotiating process. You've ended up by acknowledging that there is no solution to the problems that the Irish border presents that would involve retaining anything that remotely resembles what we've got now. You've added to that the idea that somehow I'm suggesting we have to stay in the European Union because of Brexit, because of the Irish border, which is simply not true. And the only question I have for you is this: how do you have identical economic conditions on both sides of the Irish border after... Paul, you have to listen to me, because otherwise you just make all these weird noises and none of us ever learn anything. The simple instruction is this: identical economic conditions on both sides of the Irish border. One side is in the customs union and the single market, one side is in neither. Now make that work, Paul.
No doubt that there can be arrangements which will allow
Describe
a very special circumstance of those 2 million people in the north of Ireland to be settled.
Describe them, Paul. Describe them.
It's whether people are willing to do it or not.
Describe them.
Well, you know, that it's a technical issue.
Well, describe it. I'm clever. I can keep up. Describe the circumstances in which you can make that work, Paul.
Because there's... I don't have to go through all the details of it.
I don't want all the details, Paul. I want one detail.
You can have an electronic border. You can have the trade.
What does that mean? What does that mean, Paul?
You can have it done electronically with a minimum.
How does an electronic border? How does an electronic border test? Paul, how does an electronic border test the milk to see whether or not it's infected or not? How does an electronic border count the amount of barrels in the back of a lorry? How does an electronic border know whether I've got guns in my boot?
Milk isn't infected. You don't have to test all the milk all the time. Not all products coming from abroad, not everything is tested all the time. Not every sample is tested. Not sample is tested.
No, because there's no border there now. Paul, everything I've said is true.
No, it's not. You're making it up. You're putting extreme positions, unyielding positions.
All right, let me ask you again, Paul, how is the border... How are we going to have identical economic conditions on both sides of the Irish border
they won't
when one side is in the customs union?
They will be compatible. That's all you have to have is compatibility. Some degree of compromise. Of course you can do it.
And it's a question of belief. You're absolutely certain it can be done, but you have no idea
and the
how.
will to do it. Of course it can be done.
How?
Well, I've just told you. You have it as even as
so we're going for electronic borders.
You have.
I'm going to give you 5 minutes now. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to
people to do certain things.
5 minutes to describe the electronic border. Go on.
You just let them get on with it.
Mate.
I'm sorry. You're inventing the difficulties because
I'm inventing the difficulties that Boris Johnson described as unthinkable economic and political madness.
Of course, no. That was because that is a UK negotiating. Because that's what they want the EU to agree to. But the EU are not yielding on it. Therefore, we have to move to Plan B.
What's Plan B again?
Well, Plan B is some form of electronic border.
Okay, let's just agree on that. The electronic border is the new unicorn. Am I right?
Well, one second.
Yes, it's 10:48.
Kathy's in Abington. Hello, Kathy.
Hello. I just wanted to say that you hit the nail on the head when you said about Barnier's eyes are glistening now that Corbyn's got off the fence. It is about taking control and destroying. I've lost my plot now. Hang on, no, wait a minute. No, what you were saying about they're using Ireland to get to Britain. Britain is the last piece of their federalist jigsaw that they need so badly.
Well, they're not going to get Britain, are they? That's the problem.
That's what they want. But I don't believe that the Irish people would not vote to get out of the EU. 3 votes, like that lady was saying who was in front of me, was to get them to stay in the EU. I believe the Irish people are being pulverised by immigration and all the issues that are going on.
Well, how come there's only 11% support there for an Irexit?
I don't believe that.
Well, that's what all the polls say.
Well, I think they need to go again because I think that Ireland needs to be strong and come with us on this. And Theresa May needs to stand strong. We must hold strong. The federalist EU, which is a supremacist regime, is out to get Britain. With Britain, it will complete the jigsaw. The Kalergi plan is real.
Oh dear. Okay, Kathy, if you say so.
Why does the far right seem to be thriving or beginning to thrive in continental Europe in a way that it isn't here in the UK? 0345 6060 973, the number to call. Dennis McShane, who just joined me for a few minutes, former Labour Minister for Europe, says it's simple, first past the post system. Boris Johnson, it says it's because Brexit showed people they are being listened to, the vote to leave the European Union. Which of them is right? Ryan in Chelmsford, hello.
Hello, Sheila. I'm really disappointed with the fact that you're not the only radio station. The entire media picked up on what Italy has done, but throughout the past few months, you've had great countries like Poland, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Austria, and the EU threaten them with losing their votes, sanctions and fines because they're clamping down on immigration. And as for the British being, it's all gone away with the British. No, it hasn't. We live in a society where if you say one thing, our great old police will come down on you like a ton of bricks.
What things?
The British are sorry?
What things?
What do you mean, what things?
Well, I say all kinds of things every day of the week, and I don't have the police knocking on my door.
Okay, so if I stand up in Hyde Park on a Sunday afternoon on a soapbox and stand there and say, right, I think all Muslims should be forcibly repatriated back home if they're on a terrorist list or they've done anything wrong here, I would get arrested very quickly.
What if they're born here? This is home.
I'm sorry?
If this is home, they're born here. What then?
Is it? So someone's home.
Yeah. In the way that you know, my parents. Hang on. Go on.
In your own home, would you like to destroy your own home? No.
Of course not.
Exactly. So these people that are so-called born here, and if a dog's born in a stable, it's still a dog. Okay, at the end of the day...
Yeah, but Ryan, with respect, are you talking about terrorists or all Muslims?
I'm talking about the huge undercurrent in this country and across Europe, okay? I did vote out to leave.
All right, no, but I'm asking you to be specific, because you're saying things... let me just a minute. You're bordering on hate speech, which is why I'm having to be very careful in my listening. Okay. When you say send them home, you mean terrorists or do you mean all Muslims?
Right. Anyone on the terrorist list... Okay, the security forces are watching, they get deported. Whether they live here or not, they're sent away.
Where to, Ryan? Be realistic, where to?
Well, hold on. You've got countries like Poland and Hungary and the Czech Republic and Austria and now Italy, huge countries with huge influence, good people that are not stupid, that look at the UK, they've looked at France, they can see what's going on in Sweden's descended into almost civil anarchy now. Germany have got huge problems. They see this. And it's not Poles that are doing this.
Okay, Ryan, I'm going to leave it there because I don't trust you not to just say all Muslims out, frankly. I just feel that the direction of travel of that conversation is where that was going. I'm not even going to give you the opportunity to say it, but thank you for your thoughts anyway. Bye.